This is the Monday, September 14th, 2020 Board of Commissioners meeting for Radnor Township. If you would all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'm going to start by making notice of an executive session that was held on August 11th, 2020. Can I be honest?
Jack, I can barely hear you. Is your mic on, or is there a different setting on the microphones?
Mic is on. See if I can get a little bit closer. Making notice of an executive session that was held on August 11th, 2020, and if I'm being completely honest, I can't remember what we discussed, so I will circle back to that and make a separate announcement a little bit later on. In the meantime, I'd like to get started with the recognition of Steve McNellis, who is our Public Works Director, for his 30-plus years of service to Radnor Township.
We'll stand 6 feet apart because I think that's what we got to do. So first of all, I want to thank Steve for coming back. His last day was actually at the end of August, and was nice enough to make a return tonight so that we could properly celebrate his 30-plus years of service to Radnor Township. He's a guy that I've had the pleasure of working with for only the last 10 years of service, but I think we would all agree, or the folks that know Steve know, that he's one of the hardest working, most dedicated employees that an organization of any kind could ever want. He's the guy that he's there at 7 a.m. if need be. He's there at 2 a.m. if need be. It didn't matter whenever the phone rang or whenever the sewer popped or whenever the snow fell. Steve was there, and he was the first there. He was on the spot. He anticipated problems before they happened. He solved them. And by doing that for so long, he's a guy that started working in sanitation, worked his way up to director. So he's a guy that shows that when you put the work in and you have a good attitude and you get the job done, you earn the respect of those that you work with and work for, and you can end up, making it to the director's position if that's what you so desire. But I always appreciated in the time that we worked together just how responsive you were. Selfishly, earlier this year, when we were going through a lot of change between the pandemic and some organizational changes, you made the transition for me that much easier, knowing that you were on it. That you and your department, any problems that existed out there, that you guys were going to take care of it, and it was going to not be an issue at the end of the day, which is a relief not only to me, but I would imagine to everyone that's on the other end of those phone calls and emails. So I can't thank you enough. I know you've earned the respect of all of the other department heads that you had the pleasure of working with, and the other element here is the respect of all the people that work for you in that department. It's a big department with a diverse group, and you were able to lead them through all sorts of changes, highlighted or exclamated by the pandemic that we're still dealing with now. And so for that, you deserve a lot of credit. So 2020 is definitely the year of change. We're sorry to see you sail off into retirement, but I can say with absolute confidence that there's no one that deserves it more than you. And we're all very happy for you and happy that we got a chance to work with you, and hope you enjoy every second of it. So with that, we would like to present you with this recognition of 30-plus years of service to Radnor Township. So on behalf of the staff and the residents and the Board of Commissioners, thank you very much, Steve.
Just want to thank the board, thank my family, my coworkers, all my friends that showed up. I really appreciate it. Just thanks for everything.
There you go. Thank you. Quick meeting.
Steve, thank you very much. And I'd very briefly like to add, and I imagine some other commissioners probably will as well, but I'd very briefly like to add that I know that Public Works does the stuff that we all know about, trash recycling and yard waste pickup. They do about 3 dozen other things, of which I could probably only name 2 dozen, because I've had the freedom to not really pay a whole lot of attention to it because Steve does such a phenomenal job. I get nothing but praise for Public Works from every single person who emails me. I generally speaking get an email that says, I've got a problem with fill in the blank. I love Public Works, and it has been so nice to have you here. You gave us notice way, way in advance of your intent to retire, and it feels like that time blew by. We are going to be in trouble without you. So thank you very much.
So I'm just going to say, congratulations, Steve. You and I started, I think, at the same time, pretty much. You started in the director's role, so just to echo quickly what Jack said, when I'm out and about with all of the constituents, Public Works is, people love you guys. You do a great job. You go above and beyond, and Steve, your leadership these past couple years has been incredible. So thank you all very much. Thank you, Steve. You're already tan, so I'm so happy that you've been to the beach, and I hope you get back some more and enjoy. Thank you.
Steve, I just want to say, and you led Public Works, and Public Works, they're the unsung heroes of the township. You're on call. You don't get the glory, and you and your staff they've done everything with a smile on their face. And when there's a problem at Clem McCrone, like the horsey doesn't work, Tammy will call you, and you guys are on it. You guys are there in 15 minutes if it's a safety issue or if there's a trash issue. So the township really run very, very, very smoothly with you. I'm sure it'll run smoothly without you, but you will. There's a lot of great people I know in your department, and you will, as I said before, you will be sorely missed. But thank you for 30+ years, because that's amazing. Thank you.
Steve, on behalf of the Third Ward, thank you very much.
Steve, I want to thank you for your service. It's a big part of why people want to live in Radnor is the work that you've done for decades, is to keep us safe, and just the environment is exactly as we want our community to be because of your service and your whole team. So thank you for what you've done for us.
Steve, I think I've known you the longest because I'm the one who's been on the board the longest right now, at least out of these folks. So really appreciate the Public Works group, all of the guys that are out there every day in the trucks, in the parks, on the machines, the equipment, and in the Public Works building, and with you at the helm. So did a great job, and we really appreciate your years of service. So thank you very much.
That's all of us. So can we get one more round of applause, and then we're going to move on. Okay, next, we are presenting an appreciation award to Jeffrey Stacy for the Radnor Citizens Police Organization.
Commissioners, thank you for letting us change the guard here as we're monitoring social distancing. We had to switch out because Steve McNellis had such a big crowd and support, and we're switching in for an amazing gentleman. We'll get right into the award. First of all, as a surprise to Jeff and all of us, State Representative Jenna Maris here. She'll be able to make just a real quick presentation, but I'd asked president now to come on up real quickly from the RCPO. We're just going to have a brief remark from the citizens who are so well represented here, and then the township. Mr. Wood, I can make comments.
I'd like to thank Jeff for this opportunity. If it wasn't for Jeff 5 years ago, we wouldn't be here tonight. It was his tenacity, perseverance, stick-to-itiveness, pick a word, Jeff is it. If you ever needed something done with the RCPO, Jeff was the go-to guy, and if it wasn't Jeff, then it was the chief. Now it's up to me. We have certain obstacles in the way, but we're hoping that once these obstacles are diffused and go away, we will be able to represent the community once again. But I'd like to congratulate Jeff for the accomplishment, for getting the RCPO up and running, and for the legacy that he leaves behind. Thank you.
Thank you. And then State Representative Jennifer O'Mara will make a presentation just from the House of Representatives.
Thank you very much, and thank you, everyone. So tonight I am here to offer my first appreciation and thanks, and I have a letter and an award of excellence from the Commonwealth, and I know, especially today with everything that we have going on in our society, establishing a strong relationship between our community and our police department is paramount for community safety, for creating a strong and engaged community, and for so many reasons. So I just want to thank you for all you've done for everyone in Radnor. You've made Radnor Township an even better place to live. So thank you so much and congratulations.
So I'll be brief, but you're always looking for something to say, and I wish the residents who are watching could see the group of citizens against the wall in front of our great Board of Commissioners. Mr. White and I discussed we wanted to make an award that would be able to be representative of Jeff, because he's never boastful. He's a very quiet guy who walked in here one day and said, I want to do these 3 major projects. We were all kind of scrambling saying, who's going to get that job? And we're like, who is this guy? Let's run him, make sure he's okay. Because he had so many ideas, it was hard to believe. But what happened is a friendship and a partnership. So I'll use this as a symbolism. This ward is glass. It's not plastic. And Jeff had a clear vision, as clear as this glass. And that was to make Radnor Township better, safer, and more engaged. I cannot tell you how much of an impact it has made on myself as a leader, our police team that is represented here. In today's age, with the problems in this country, hands down, Jeff's leadership, the people standing behind you, the support of the commissioners, Mr. White, we are in a better position to deal with those. We still have to challenge ourselves to do better, but we are in a better position because of the policing with our citizens together. And there's several programs come out of it. I'm not going to read about all of them, but you've seen it before in presentations. Jeff, your clear vision was a true inspiration to this entire township. We all have benefited for it, from serving at the Papal visit, on deck at 4 a.m., our citizen volunteers, to having some of the organizational stuff. And Jeff likes a good shirt. You'll see the shirts on there keeping us on target. Your clear vision has made Radnor Township better, and that's a rare accomplishment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I don't know if you can hear me through this muffled. Okay, good. I would just like to say just a couple of thank yous. First and foremost to the citizens of Radnor Township, the people who volunteered. Unless you put your time and your efforts into this, none of this happens. So I appreciate the early mornings and the late hours that we all have put in over the years, and for the friendships that I've developed there. I would also like to thank the Board of Commissioners and the township leadership. The support has been amazing. I started out with this goal of really building trust and you build a good community, a safe community through trust and work with the citizens of the community and the police department. So, so thank you for your support and your leadership. I want to thank my son Jake and my daughter Julie, who has to work and is not here, but they gave up some of their time with their dad on a regular basis. So thank you very much, pal, for doing that. And then last, I would like to just thank the Radnor Township Police Department. For those of you watching at home, I know you watch the news, you see things going on around the country. I don't know that you could really appreciate what an amazing police department we have in this township, and the commitment that they have made to this, not only this program, but this township is absolutely amazing. And, you know, Chris teases me about coming in here and saying, all right, here's my list of things to do, but, you know, a young Lieutenant Flanagan was my wingman for a long time, and we've developed a great friendship over the years, and it's through his leadership and leadership of the police department for getting around this that's really made this successful. So thank you all. I'm humbled by this award and very grateful. So thank you very much, Jeff, too.
Circling back to the notice of executive session that was held on August 11th, 2020, we discussed matters respecting property owned by the township or to which obligations were owed by the township and legal matters that are not docketed in the Court of Common Pleas. We're going to move on next to item number 3, which is public participation. Before we do, I'm going to make notice that item 5G, which amends and restates Article 1, Chapter 260 of the Radnor Township Code relating to amusement tax, is going to be pulled and put on a subsequent agenda. The packet contains an incorrect description of the new ordinance. As a result, if your comment relates to that, you're more than welcome to come and make it, but just be aware that we will not be voting on that today. We will be voting on that at a later date. With that in mind, I'm opening up the floor to public participation.
Hi, I'm Deanna Doan. I'm the president now of the WBA, or the Wayne Business Association.
Sorry.
So I'm here to actually just say thank you to everyone here at the township. For the last 4 months, you have supported having the Wayne Picnic Grove and approved that. And it has been such a great benefit to the community and our businesses there, not only on North Wayne, but for, I think, morale around Wayne for businesses. And I just thank you so much for continuing to support our businesses. I mean, we have a lot of, you know, lots still to get through, but having that tent there has brought people together. And I mean, it's not just been for drinks and music, but I've seen people having coffees. We've used it for meetings. The church has used it. There's been different classes and people meeting there, and it's just been just a great benefit. So thank you to everyone on the township staff, the police department that has monitored it, the public works that has cleaned the trash. It has just been a great benefit. So thank you so much. And of course, we look forward to working with you on other projects after this is all over. So thanks very much.
Mask on or off, or what's the protocol? Okay. Hi, my name's Michael Smythe. I own a local small business, the Land Rover store up the street. We really appreciate just how friendly the board has been towards local businesses, and we continue to recognize that we, across the nation, over 50% of the economy is driven by small businesses, and it's really important that you have a township in support. COVID-19 brought great pressures on businesses, and especially a business that currently is under construction and had to kind of re-engineer the way we did business on the fly, and a lot of changing things happened. I recently reached out to the township requesting the opportunity to look at a small number of Sunday work that needs to get completed on my site because we're so past our time budget and past our money budget that we really are looking to get some work done during the non-typical business hours in which we operate, which really is beneficial to the township and the community because it really does reduce the amount of traffic and enables us to get in and do work during a 9 to 5 or limited hours to complete some of the site work that we have to complete. So there's a benefit. There's no real, there would not have been any real request had it not been for COVID-19 and some of the pressures that businesses have faced and how we currently operate that we didn't anticipate previously. But I think there should be consideration by the board for special exceptions that support initiatives by small businesses in order to, one, do something that makes a lot of sense, and two, something that really will support our business success in the community. So I don't know what process there is in place, but I'm asking for a process in which a special exception could be granted and that the board would support. And really, we were looking to do some work 3 Sundays between October and December in order to complete site work, and I wanted to do that with township approval and with township support. So I don't know if there's any questions or.
So since this is public comment, we just get to hear what you say. I'm going to
Okay.
suggest that you speak with staff further about this.
Okay.
Because we can't really answer your questions, and now wouldn't really be the right forum to anyway.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Those are the guys you want to talk to.
Wait, isn't it on the agenda? Later in the agenda, didn't Kevin put this, you said you put this on the agenda?
There is an agenda item regarding the noise ordinance, but Mr. Smythe had come to staff to involve, or to inquire about getting a waiver from the provisions. Unfortunately, there's no regulations in our codes that allow staff or administration to waive those provisions, so I thought it was best for Mr. Smythe to prepare a letter asking what he wanted to do and bring this matter in front of the board.
Well, Kevin did present to us, Mr. Smythe intends to attend the meeting and request permission for the board to permit some construction on Sundays per the attached letter. So I interpreted that as being an agenda item. I guess it's not. As it stands right now, there is no Sunday work allowed, but that will be under consideration later in the meeting.
Okay.
So if that is allowed, then maybe that's when you would ask for the,
You got to say it in your microphone.
Well, I'll hang around and wait until I'm sorry I stepped up early, but I'm willing to step up again. And perhaps that gives everyone some time to think about what I've identified, and we can discuss it when it's the appropriate time. Thank you.
Is there any additional public comment?
I'll make this very brief since I'm apparently behind schedule. My name's Tom Schrodenbach. I'm here representing the 50 to 60 families at and individuals at the Skunk Hollow Community Garden. And I really came tonight to thank Steve McNellis, which I apparently am late for. But I thought I would take a minute to share with the board how important the Steve has been and the Public Works Department has been to the Skunk Hollow Community Garden itself. We're all inexperienced and essentially amateurs and just volunteers at the garden. We're not always perfectly organized. We don't always have our act together. Sometimes we'll get a call and say, we do a lot of outreach and time spent with groups coming for service projects. So we got a call. We got 50 Haverford School and Agnes Irwin School girls coming this weekend, and we need to be ready for them. And we'll look at the piles of wood chips, which is one thing they can, husky guys can do and girls can do as well. Move wood chips, move compost, weed. All of a sudden, I look at the wood chip piles and they're gone. People have been using them to do the paths and maintenance on the garden, and I'll say, "Wow, I got to get Steve." And I write Steve. I think in maybe 2 weeks we'll get a pile of wood chips. The next day or maybe that afternoon, there's wood chips out there. So he's been that kind of guy, and I know he gets a lot of help from Lee, Mike Simmons, and Tim, and all of his staff. So it's just that we're very appreciative of what he's done for us. So I will try to catch up with him and thank him personally, as I've done once before. So just thought you ought to know how important Public Works is, and the commissioners as well, to the Skunk Hollow effort. So I won't belabor this, and I won't go any further. We do this food collection. We collect on Saturday mornings throughout the summer, and we deliver that produce to a Delaware County food bank down at Prospect Park, and that's probably the only, maybe 500-600 families that are served organically grown fresh produce that otherwise they probably have maybe little chance of having something that comes out of that into that kind of situation. So when the township supports us, that support is passed on to many other people besides just the gardeners who enjoy it, but pass it on to many other families. So thanks for your time. I should have been here earlier. Next time I will be. So thanks.
Any additional public comment? Step on up. Well, so Hartford Trail, I believe, is on the agenda. You are free to make a public comment now, or you can wait until the item comes up, your choice. Or both. Sure, absolutely. Nope. Do use the microphone, otherwise you won't be audible on the video.
My name is Attorney William Perrone. I represent James R. Kenny Excavating and Paving Company in Collegeville, Pennsylvania. I have submitted a letter of objections on September 8th of 2020 outlining my objections to his bid being disqualified for the Hartford project. In addition to my letter of September 8th, additional counsel is working with me on this. His name is Travis Kreiser, and he also today faxed a cover letter with 4 exhibits, Exhibit 1 through 4. And I believe it was faxed to the township manager, and we also faxed it to the solicitor, and he may or may not have gotten all the exhibits due to some kind of transmission problem. But I have a full copy of the letter that Attorney Kreiser has directed to the township manager, and I'd like to hand it to you. And also what I did, since this contains 100 pages, I covered, regarding the cover letter, I made 8 copies, so at least the members of the commissioners can see the cover letter. So this is the bulk copy. That's the commissioner one. Would you mind passing them down?
Thank you.
See the guy over there with the mask, one of those guys.
So if I may, try to highlight what's in both my September 8th objections and also Kreiser's submission that he made today. Kenny bid was the lowest bid, and it was disqualified. And as a matter of a little background information, we're under the understanding that the awarding of the bid's going to happen tonight by the board, or at least it's on the agenda. First of all, on December 13th of 2019, the Radnor posted a first invitation through pen bid for this contract. On the 19th, there was a meeting of the township that the award would be made January 27th. January 17th, Kenny submitted through pen bid a bid for $378,369. Kenny, on that bid, the first bid, was the lowest bid, and that's Exhibit A to my September 8th letter. Kenny then, following that on January 20th, submitted an original bond and supporting documents were hand-delivered to the township. Kenny's office called the project manager, Capella, and was asked about, or Capella told Kenny that all bids, even though his was the lowest, were rejected because apparently the bid came in over the township's expected budget. Then the township on July 15th rebid the contract, removing certain portions of it. August 6th, there was a meeting held here, and there was a statement made that today the township was going to rule or award the lowest bid on today's meeting. Kenny, on August 14th, submitted a bid that was $337,176. Kenny again was the lowest bidder on the second rebid, and that's part of Exhibit B to my September 8th letter or objection.
You have 1 minute.
Pardon?
You have 1 minute.
Because you're doing public comment, you only get 5 minutes.
Oh.
So obviously you have enough to go through this. It'll probably take more than 5 minutes. So when we get to the item, I would recommend you stay and then go through all this, because I do want to hear all this. Otherwise, you're going to be cut off in 1 minute.
All right. Should I stop now and?
Why don't you come back afterwards?
Okay.
That's probably the simplest thing.
I
That'll
was
also
trying-
give us the time to review your letter.
I'm trying to expedite the argument, but that's fine.
I totally get it. We just have a 5-minute limit. Unfortunately,
That's
we
fine.
can't make exceptions.
Thank you.
Do you have one additional letter?
Pardon?
Do you have one more letter?
You,
We're missing one for Sean.
Commissioner Farr here on the end here does not have a letter.
I'll give you my copy. I have it.
Okay. Is there any additional public participation? Seeing none, I will move on to the consent agenda. I will move for items 4A through K. Is there a second? And are there any items that the commissioner would like to pull?
Move to separate 3 items.
My pick?
All right. I'd like to remove items E, H, and K.
Success. Okay, item
There you go.
4E is approval of ballot drop box license agreement with the County of Delaware Bureau of Elections. I have what I anticipate will be a proposed amendment to this, but before we get to that, John, could you tell us a little bit about this? Or whoever on staff would be a better pick.
Well, Commissioner Booker pulled it out, and let me just go through my understanding of what this is. It's a request from the County Bureau of Elections to have drop boxes at, I guess, all 49 municipalities in Delaware County, and they're asking that each municipality that would like to do this sign a license agreement. That's what's in front of the board, this ballot drop box license agreement. A little bit of background on this. This is one of about 6 or 7 ballot initiatives that have been challenged and were challenged in the Western District of Pennsylvania in federal court. And I have that court case. I've looked at it. And the federal court judge in that case basically punted and back to state court because there are all issues that have never been resolved in state court. So, I mean, the opinion from federal court is sort of interesting, but basically, the federal court sent it back to the state court. They abstained, for lack of a better word. But since then, the governor asked the Pennsylvania Supreme Court to take the case up, which they have. And again, this is one of his ballot box, whether a ballot box can be placed somewhere other than the Board of Elections and media is one of a variety of issues that are being under challenge. So the Pennsylvania Supreme Court has the case now. They had briefs ordered and were filed on September 8th, but they haven't made a decision on whether or not ballot boxes and then the other issues are legitimate or not. The ballot box in particular came from the Secretary of State. She sent out, I guess prior to the primary, some guidance on how this would have to be done. There's a cover letter that we received from the Board of Elections which describes how this would be done and how it would be secured and where it should go at individual municipalities. So the Secretary of State has authorized it, and it's been challenged in federal court. Now it's in front of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. So that's where this stands in terms of the legality of this. I can tell you that the election code doesn't mention ballot boxes anywhere in it. It does say that ballots have to be delivered to the County Board of Election, and it also lets the County Board of Elections designate branch offices in the county. So that's on this, just on this issue, not on all the other issues, just on this issue. So there's some conflicting statutory language in the election code. And the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, I think, is going to resolve it. I don't know when. I think the Board of Elections has to give notice of these locations 20 days before the election. So you're looking at it probably in October. At some point in October, this information has to be out there. And I would guess that the Pennsylvania Supreme Court is going to make a decision by the end of September. But who knows? They can make a decision whenever they want. So that's what's in front of you, just on this issue.
So I'm going to move for item 4E. I'm going to ask for a second, and then I'll offer an amendment, and it'll pass or not, and we can discuss the issue.
Move the table.
Second.
Move the table until this is legal.
Okay, there is a motion to table. Is there a second? Hearing none, the motion fails for lack of a second. I'm going to move to amend item E to make it a springing lease such that we would not put out the ballot boxes until such time as the Pennsylvania Supreme Court has opined on them, My concern being that if we solicit a whole bunch of ballots, they're deposited, and then the Pennsylvania Supreme Court comes back and tells us that they're illegal, I have no idea how we unring that bell and communicate with everybody. We'd have to open their ballot, which for obvious reasons, that would be really inappropriate to do. But we'd also want to make sure that everyone knew that their ballot was in some way not going to be counted and they were going to come back and vote a second time. So I foresee a lot of problems. I'd like to not put out the box until the Supreme Court gives us its blessing.
I'll second that amendment.
Okay, there's a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
Hey, I'm going to vote against everything on this.
The amendment passes 5-1 with Commissioner Abel absent. Okay, is there any commissioner comment on the amended motion?
Yeah, first of all, where's your language about a springing lease? Is it just, you're going to record it, or is there specific language?
Well, I'm pretty confident that our solicitor can come up with something. If you really want me on the fly to suggest language, I guess I could, but I'm going
I
to
think
suggest that we let council do that.
My understanding is that the lease has a condition to it, basically, which is that the ballot box would not be placed at the Township building until the Supreme Court blesses it. I mean, basically, that's what I heard, Jack, if that's okay.
You got it.
So, which I think is probably what you were going to suggest, Commissioner Booker, but
Well, until we had the opinion, I wasn't going to even have us vote on it, but that's neither here nor there. So substantively, on this, the ballot box itself, so first of all, the requirements, and I read these memos, and they seem kind of vague, but basically they say the ballot box could be anywhere. It could be affixed, it could be not affixed. They do call for surveillance, but say that surveillance would be provided by the people in charge of the building where it's located or through a grant of money to come later. So what's the what's the deal with surveillance? Who would be in charge of it? How would that be recorded? Who would pay for the surveillance? And where does this township plan on putting this drop box? And if we have it here at the township building, anybody at the township building would be driving by mailboxes that they could put it in to bring it here. So any answers on any of the surveillance or where it would be, or?
let me just read from the information that the township received at the end of August on this. And this is from the Director of Elections. The county got a grant of $2.2 million to do this, and $200,000 of that was earmarked for the 50 ballot drop boxes throughout the county. You know, the proposal is to deploy the 50, one in each of the 49 municipalities, one at the county government center and media, sometime between the middle of September and October 1st. So I would guess that you're going to have a decision from the Pennsylvania Supreme Court before October 1st. That's, you know, briefs were filed on September 8th, 2 weeks. You're going to have a decision either way. There's also a description of these boxes. They can be either inside or outside in the elements. The preferred locations is where they would be accessible, where the boxes can be installed permanently for use in the upcoming and future elections. Preferred locations are inside public buildings. They should be placed in well-lit, visible, ADA accessible locations and will be under surveillance from video equipment included in the grant funding or from the municipalities' currently available surveillance equipment. So if you don't have surveillance equipment, apparently the county is going to give you money to put surveillance equipment up to keep the boxes under surveillance.
Well, that's, again, those are pretty vague. If it's indoors or outdoors, public buildings, if you don't have surveillance, then there's money for surveillance. And all of this waiting on a Pennsylvania Supreme Court decision and then to be put in and installed prior to this November 3rd election, a notice given. seems very impractical, and it doesn't sound like there's any answers on where we plan on putting this one if we approve this, and what surveillance there would be.
It's a box, Rich. We're going to bolt it in front of the police station.
You're not supposed to put it in front of the police station because there's certain prohibitions against being near police in the voting code, in the elections code.
Why don't we ask staff? Mr. White, have you guys considered where this might go?
Yeah, no, the location considered would be out in front of the building up here, in front of the main doors of the building, where it is ADA accessible, where there is adequate lighting. There is currently security cameras recording that area. We would still impress upon the county to install their own in the event that something happens with our security cameras. We don't feel like the township security cameras should be the sole. We rely solely on that, so we would ask the county to install theirs. But this is the location right out front of this building here. That's what we contemplated.
Thank you for the correction. That's
Bill,
even better.
Bill, would that be inside or outside?
Outside.
Okay, would it be possible to put it inside? Maybe just in the lobby, so someone, A, would be protected from the elements, and B, it makes it that much harder for someone to strap a chain to it and pull it out.
It has to be available to voters 24 hours
Yeah,
per
so
day.
that's, the
It needs to-
24/7 availability complicates that, which, that's why it would have to be outside.
You
'Cause-
can't lock the doors that go into the building, but keep the other doors open, or no?
I mean, we could, there's a security issue there.
Or put it downstairs in the police lobby?
You can't have it in
can't
the
do it in
police
the police.
station. It specifically says.
All right.
So why not put that in the item on the agenda because we didn't have any, so that's fine. I'm glad to hear where the plan is to put it over here in front. But even if it is under surveillance, what difference does that make? People can still, this will be a vessel to cheat. And suppose somebody comes in and puts 4 or 5 or a dozen or 100 harvested ballots into this box, and it's on videotape. What do you do then?
Can you define a harvested ballot?
Person's wearing a mask. What are you going to do? Have them open it, and then they're going to have to invalidate all of the ballots that are in there?
I'm going to move
What's
to call
a
the question
harvested
at this
ballot?
point. Is there a second?
Ballot harvesting is something that occurs when certain individuals, it's usually the Democrats, and the person who was the best.
I hear a second.
order.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
Bill Spengler
Motion passes 5 to 1
no, wait,
with
it's not, we're not done.
Commissioner
You got to have public
We are
comment, by the
done.
way.
We're done.
You need to have
Moving
public
on to
comment. Look
item
at, see what they
H.
did. As soon as somebody's,
Resolution number
cheating. Wait,
2020-96, authorizing the execution of a grant application to the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development Keystone. Oh. He's actually correct about that.
always correct, Jack. The person who did the most ballot harvesting.
Rich, you got to stop. Rich?
Commissioner President.
Point of order, the relevance,
Dozens or that he would collect.
I'm moving to adjourn the meeting for
A
5
vessel
minutes.
for
Is
that
there a
type of
second?
cheating.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We stand adjourned for the next 5 minutes.
So let me tell you about Bill Spengler harvest. So do you want to hear more about ballot harvesting yet? And
So we're coming back.
The question was,
I misspoke previously and said that we would have public comment. In general, we don't do public comment on consent agenda items, although since I did suggest that there would be there would be public participation for this, I will take any public participation specific to item 4E now. Is there anyone who would like to comment as a member of the public on item 4E? Hearing none, I will now call the vote. All in favor say aye.
Point of order. We're not done discussion.
All opposed, nay.
I voted nay on this before, but Jack, this
Okay.
is a portal
Rich, there was a
for
motion to call the
cheating. You
vote.
know,
Rich, there was a motion to call the vote. It was seconded.
why
The
would
motion
you want to
passed.
have,
Now we're done. Would you like to
this
discuss
would be a
item
method for
4H?
cheating. Why,
Rich, is there any
Adjourn the meeting.
comment that you'd like to make on item 4H?
the box, though.
Okay, we're moving on to item 4H. Otherwise, I'm going to consider this waived, Rich.
You're going to consider it what, Jack, the
Waived.
genius, smacked?
Rich, do you have any item on item 4H?
Read, so the drop box is a,
We're now moving on to item 4K.
we should not have it. We shouldn't have it.
Do you have any comment on item 4K?
4H. What,
No,
read for item
4K.
4H, Jack.
We previously discussed for item 4H. You didn't have anything to comment on it. You wanted to talk about drop boxes, so I moved on to item 4K.
But there's no, you need to have a vote on it, dope.
No, Rich.
Yeah,
You're the person
you
who,
need to,
Rich, you're the one who pulled it out. You
I'm the
don't
one who
have a
pulled it out,
comment.
and it's
We're
pulled out.
putting
Until it
back
gets
in.
voted on, it does not.
We're now moving to item 4K, authorizing the participation in Houston Galveston Area Council's HJAC cooperation.
Point of order, Jack, you have to,
Rich, would you like to talk about item 4K now? Otherwise, we're going to vote on the remainder of the consent agenda.
go ahead and vote on it. You're out of order. It's an illegal operation of the meeting. Go back and do item H.
Are you going to talk about item H? Are you going to talk about item H?
You have to.
Are you going to talk about drop
You have to vote.
boxes?
You have to vote on it.
Rich, do you want to talk about item 4H now, or do you want to talk about drop
I
boxes?
want you to run a meeting.
I move for the consent agenda with the exception of item 4E, which has previously been discussed and voted on. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay.
Nay, there's a point of order. You need to have both of those items pulled out and voted on separately. You can't put them back in. You need to have a motion.
Motion passes 5-1. Commissioner Booker.
Procedurally,
Commissioner Booker.
stand in. Jack does not want to run the meeting properly. You pulled out the items. We need to vote on them separately.
I hear a motion. Is there a second? Not hearing a second, your motion fails for lack of a second.
Vote
Moving to committee
on
reports.
the items. They've been illegally approved.
Item 5A, ordinance number 2019-15, introduction, amending the township zoning ordinance to allow townhouse developments in certain areas of the C3 Service Commercial District and to provide regulations therefore. I will so move. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Nick, could you read us in on this one?
Yes. You've seen this ordinance several times. We've been to various public meetings. We've been to meetings with neighbors. Overwhelming support from the neighbors for this project. The only difference between the ordinance you're seeing here this evening and the ordinance you reviewed in the past is that township staff suggested that we include the word existing when we define curb line in the setback provision for the front yard setback. So that's really the only change in the ordinance from the last time we saw it until today. We've been delayed due to the COVID process and reviews, but we're back here. I believe it is for introduction, John? Oh, but I believe it's for introduction and scheduling of a public hearing.
Is there any commissioner comment on this issue?
Yes. By removing the word existing, does that then take the off-street parking away that was on there?
No,
Mr.
that's why it's actually being added in,
Okay.
Damien. So we're adding it in so that the off-street parking would be preserved. So the
Okay.
off-street parking for the residents.
It will be preserved.
Will be preserved. Remember, the site itself contains sufficient off-street parking on site. This
Okay.
is the additional parking on the street for the other residents of the community.
Okay, which is very important from the residents that I've talked to and the property owners along North Aberdeen there. That's a very important point, so I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
It should be noted for the minutes, items H and K were not properly approved, so they should not be acted on by staff. If you do, you act on your own peril.
So noted. Is there any additional commissioner comment on this issue?
Nick, on this item, this is for the C3 district, right?
Correct.
Providing for townhouses to be built where it doesn't provide for that today,
That is correct.
in this specific C3 zoning
Under
area.
certain limitations, yes.
What we talked about before was the requirement that these items, anybody taking advantage of this needs to be able to meet the stormwater infiltration requirement. Is that part of this?
That is not written in the ordinance. Of course, that's a township staff and engineering requirement.
Still going to be required.
It's just required through the stormwater management
Yeah.
ordinance.
Doesn't go in a separate standalone zoning amendment. It's required.
Well, then it wouldn't hurt to specifically call out that no waiver will be granted from the infiltration requirement to avail yourself of this special zoning provision.
Every waiver stands on its own merits, if there's even one asked for. So, and that, again, that's under the stormwater ordinance. That's where the waiver's authorized or not under this.
Is there any additional commissioner comment? Hearing none, I'll call for public comment. Hearing none, is there any staff comment? Sorry, I took those out of that order. Is there any staff comment? Hearing none, I'll go back to public comment. One last chance. Going, gone. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Motion passes 4-2 with Commissioner Abel not present.
Thank you.
Moving on to resolution number 2020-94, approving the purchase of outfitting equipment for the township's water rescue vehicle in a total amount of $37,777.16. I'm assuming, Chief, this is yours, or Bill?
I'll jump in real quickly and then let the chief take over from there. I wanted to recognize the police department for their creativity in addressing a need through, recognizing, high water rescues in years past. They identified a service need and found a way to get that done and obtaining a used piece of equipment at virtually no cost to the township. In fact, what's in front of the board tonight represents almost all the cost that we'll spend for this vehicle. And then based on its service at the last weather event, it maybe already paid for itself. So with that, I just want to thank the chief and his staff for the work they did in pulling this together.
Commissioners, thank you, Mr. White. Commissioners, we have two videos we'd like to show you. One is a report that is listed on a spreadsheet in the chief's report, which was 107 incidents. I'll just have, due to the length of that, I'll just have you guys take a look at it. The video represents the work of many the volunteer firefighters and EMS personnel throughout the township, the Public Works Division and the Police Department. Actually, Officer Pyrie to my left and retired Corporal Gallagher, and unfortunately Sergeant Gluck, who actually helped procure the vehicle in Connecticut. But I'll just get in the videos because I think they'll explain what we're trying to tell you about.
And while Ian tees them up, I think our total runtime here is we'll say less than 4 minutes, right, Ian? Between the two? Yeah, so.
On Tuesday, August 4th, 2020, your Radnor Public Works and Police Department, along with our fire companies and EMS partners, responded township-wide to over 106 calls for service relating to wind, rain, and flooding conditions. Of these, the most serious incidents included several water rescues, trees into homes, multiple live down wires. We are very fortunate to report that throughout this event, there were no reported injuries to the members of our great community or our first responders.
We surveyed varying degrees of damage from across the township. For example, the intersection of Darby Paoli Road and Goshen Road saw the highest floodwaters we've seen in recent history. The southern end of the township experienced severe flooding, as did portions of Wayne. West Wayne saw severe wind damage leading to toppled trees, which closed access points in and out of the township. Suffice to say, the majority of the township was impacted by flooding. Even areas that do not often flood saw rising waters from the tropical storm. During the storm, Radnor Township personnel worked tirelessly to manage the effects of the storm, as we had no less than 50 staff members working in the field. From the police department to public works to engineering to community development and those administrators manning the phones, this was truly an all-hands-on-deck effort. Thank you to Township Manager Bill White for his leadership and to all staff members for your dedication and teamwork.
These seasonal storms are impressive and dangerous, and they are becoming more common in our area. But we cannot stress enough the hazards associated with taking risks during these major weather events. Vehicles are quickly swept away in conditions that are seemingly innocent. Even though water may appear shallow, it is hard to determine the depths or strength of the current. It is extremely unsafe for our children to play or even stand beside moving water during a storm. In partnership with the residents of this great community, we want to urge everyone to stay home and inside during hazardous weather events, helping to keep safe all of our citizens, visitors, and of course our first responders. Thank you, Radnor Board of Commissioners, all of our amazing staff, our fire volunteers, our EMS workers, and most importantly, our residents and our business community for coming together as a team. It has made all the difference in our recent recovery efforts for this storm. Stay safe, Radnor. As Ian keys up the second video, our public information team, which Ian is right in front of us, and Molly Gallagher, who was not able to attend tonight, put that together. And Mr. White wanted to end with that safety message. That was Darby Paoli Road, and those children were in perilous danger where we had them step back. We're glad they're safe and they were not injured, but we wanted to make an impression for a PSA. And obviously, you saw the truck as you approached the boardroom this evening. And what we're going to do with this money is upfit the vehicle, which means give it some lights and sirens, some safety, some very needed safety equipment, and most importantly, a lift that would be able to lift a hospital bed or a wheelchair. It is the one thing that we need to address to get any of our citizens, visitors, or residents into the back of the vehicle. This would also be used, I will say a word that people probably don't want to hear, in the snow. So it does have the capability to serve dual roles, not just water.
Okay.
So where are you going to keep it? Where are you going to keep this vehicle?
Vehicle be kept here at the Township building at this point in time. And I would like to stress it's a joint use vehicle with the fire department. They are training with it, so it's not exclusively. It's under the Office of Emergency Management. So as you saw, there's a Bremar firefighter on it. The Deputy Chief of Radnor Fire Company is training the Radnor firefighters. So let's just say a sudden storm hits, which does happen on occasion due to changing conditions. They could come pick that up and utilize the vehicle.
How much is it going to cost to maintain it per year? I mean, the point is, if you need it, is it going to be ready?
Yes, sir. I mean, the vehicle came with 5,000, just shy of 6,000 miles on it. So I would consider it almost new vehicle. It's a 2013. The normal purchase price for the government is over $176,000 without the upfit that we're asking for. If we start to use it more, we have other opportunities to potentially place at other locations. But for right now, since it's so close to us and then so close to Radnor Fire, it seems like a good location here, and it's under video monitoring here at the Township building.
Chief, I have a number of questions, and you'll have to forgive me. I'm going to ask, and perhaps I should know some of them. But due to COVID and work concerns and work constraints on myself, I haven't been very close to the fire company and the board and over the last several months. So bear with me. But I guess my questions are more for the board, and that is, as the needs for emergency services in the township continue to grow, as we see more and more of these storms, as we deal with more and more snow incidents, as there needs to be more kind of interoperability between, as the chief alluded to, the fire company and the police department and our emergency services. What are we doing to address the need and what I perceive a need as an emergency services committee and coordinating this, and not so much from a response mechanism, but the budget requests that come in front of us. You know, it was just last year that there was $250,000 additional request, and the board granted that for the fire company, and that has been put to good use. And we're going to hear from Administrative Director Brazunas at the next meeting on how that money is being put to use, as well as the grants that we were able to secure from the fire company at the federal level for additional services. But I guess the question is to the board, and I'd like to propose at some point, and we'll come back with a plan, but I think we need an emergency services committee of some sort so that there is representation, not just from the police department, but from the representative fire departments as well, so that we're taking a look at all of this. And I applaud the efforts of the police department in acquiring this vehicle. I think that it's much needed, and certainly the things that they need to do to outfit it, but I think it raises larger questions across the board in terms of what is the go forward from an emergency services standpoint, and how are we addressing that. And I'm not looking for specific answers here, but you know, I think that things like this raise that question. And then you touched on it a little bit, but just, you know, the deployment between the fire company and the police department with this vehicle and the trained personnel, you know, how is that going to happen in more detail, I guess, is a question for you, Chief, and how are we working through that?
I'll give you the short answer if you have more. For something like this to work, I know in our township there's a couple of things. When we activated the Office of Emergency Management, Sergeant Gluck took over for Sergeant Smith, And we're currently working, I have homework here, which I haven't gotten to, is our emergency management plan that will help tie those together and opening up monthly meetings where we would be able to share information, projects, and equipment that's actually present in the different facilities, which would be one very small example of what your goal is, Commissioner, about sharing resources, knowing what everybody's doing, and creating the best product for response in the township. With that being said, specifically to this vehicle, we wanted it to be a joint effort, because with a surprise storm, if we don't have the staffing here, we want it to be able to immediately go out and produce that. To my left is Officer Pyre, driver training instructor for Radnor Township, EVOC. He, Sergeant Gluck, and Deputy Chief Michael McGuire from the Radnor Fire Company worked together to create a driver training program so that the vehicle can go out and be used. Luckily, we asked permission of Mr. White, who had a vision of a storm coming, and we had the truck ready to go by being able to operate it. However, the request before you financially, we're going to be adding some features to the truck so that it is more functional and can do, like I said, snow or water, take a hospital bed, a wheelchair, et cetera, to assist in rescue missions. So there'll be another phase of training, and we hope to include the Bryn Mawr Fire Company if they want to be involved with as well. It's not exclusive, that everybody would be trained and we would work in a partnership to provide services during sort of these extreme storms with that vehicle.
And do you have officers that have gone through water rescue and like the WRER that about 20 firefighters went through recently? Is that on the docket as well?
We are sending 2 officers. Luckily, the county class it was full. We're sending 2 officers, which will take us, I believe, to 5. But Officer Pyre, Officer McHale, myself, Kevin Gallagher are certified up to the technician level, actually, in water rescue. Under the direction of the manager, the entire township, Public Works Division, and the entire police department have water rescue awareness.
Okay. And just one final question, is something I was just thinking about. You know, there exist a lot of dollars within the Fire Company Relief Association for specifically things like this in terms of outfitting, you know, new equipment and stuff like that. And I don't know the answer to this question, but, you know, is there any opportunity to leverage some of that? Or is there a hard line? And I don't know that you know this also, but perhaps Eamon does, or Chief McGuire or others. Is there a hard line between the Radnor Relief Association dollars, of which there is substantial money there for outfitting this type of thing, and the Radnor Police Department? And I guess that's more of a question for the state and bylaws and stuff like that, but it might be worth exploring.
I'll work with Mr. White and see how we can obtain that information.
Okay.
Was this in the budget?
This was not included in the 2020 capital budget, because quite honestly, we didn't have the vehicle yet when the budget was adopted. So this is coming together kind of real time.
Why not put it in the budget for next year and get it next year?
Well, I'll let the chief go into the details again on the safety aspects of having the lights and the equipment added to the vehicle, but quite honestly, the reason why we're bringing this to you tonight is because we saw it firsthand a couple weeks ago what the benefit was, and if we get another storm like that, if another hurricane or tropical storm moves up the East Coast on us, this vehicle, having the lights and equipment on it, is only going to be that much more useful. I'm not sure if Chris told, it had a lead vehicle with it, a pickup truck with lights and sirens to help escort it around. We had to leave the lead vehicle behind because the waters were too high. Luckily, it was daytime, and the vehicle itself is big enough that it's easily visible, but if it's a nighttime storm, that's going to be problematic. And Chris can go into a lot more details about that. So,
one question
again,
before,
that's why we're moving it forward.
So it's not budgeted, so something you really feel like you need. What is it that this vehicle would do that we didn't have, that we needed in the past of storms and we didn't have? And so is this going to do something that we couldn't get done last storm, or the one before, or the one before that?
Just if I could answer the first question, because I think it's important, Commissioner, to answer that and for the community. It was a lottery So basically, it is hit or miss. We joined a law enforcement program through federal and state connections where surplus equipment. So we were never aware when we would get a vehicle, and if we did get the vehicle, would it be the one we requested? And number two, what condition would it be in? When we saw this one with only 5,900 miles, we did jump on getting it for bringing it back here. Once we had the storm, we did ask Mr. White to consider putting this out before the commissioners, because I think we should be response ready. The ever-changing floods that Mr. Norsini spoke of are challenging us beyond all of the Radnor Township equipment, except for a front-end loader, which, as you know, does not go very fast. And the truck has to be able to get all over the township to support the fire company and for the fire company to support it. So that's why we are asking out of the budget year to upfit this vehicle. One of the things we're adding in the back, if you saw in the video, the one subject, Officer Pyrie was assisting, was having trouble getting up the ladder. So we would like to have a scenario where we're not caught off guard and we can get somebody. If we did have a wheelchair or a bed, it would take an entire fire company response to get that subject into the vehicle. And that's why we asked for it, just due to the sheer height. And then the height of the vehicles you saw when you walked in, the air intake is on the top of the vehicle, so it allows it to go through phenomenally deep water. I hope I answered.
So, again, what does this do that we needed in the past that we didn't have the equipment for? Anything? Or you just think this is going to do better what we've been able to make do without in the past?
Significantly, that we will significantly reduce the exposure of, in particular, firefighters who are trained in water rescue to go out. The police now can assist, but officers in the last couple of storms were able to, they were forced to go out, take their gun belts off, throw them in the back of the car, and go into water untrained. The township was gracious enough to immediately issue us unbudgeted water rescue equipment. Now our cars have 2 life jackets, a throw ring, and one or two throw bags in every vehicle, including the command staff, so we can get out there. So these firefighters in particular are putting themselves at grave danger going out there, where this vehicle greatly reduces the danger. If we have to wait for a boat, although Radnor Fire Company has now purchased a boat, it still takes a while to get a boat in service, bring it down. This vehicle, as you saw how quickly it can move and its maneuverability, would reduce citizens trapped in water waiting.
But again, right now, we get them with a front-end loader, or we send man to waiting to go and get them, or get the boat.
It would be, up until last year, we had to wait for outside resources because we did not have a boat in the township. One, the front-end loader just doesn't work. It's too slow, so we don't even use it. Not saying if it was somewhere that it wouldn't drive out and do it, but usually it's put away because it's so slow and we don't use it. But we didn't have any capability. It was personnel in high-level waters. And we've sank a couple police cars. I mean, we've been in the hot seat for dumping police cars into the water and totally ruined them trying to get through stuff.
One last thing. Commissioner Abel talked many times about gates to stop people from going into these deep areas when there's a flood. Wouldn't that cost less than $37,000?
The gates actually, we looked extensively at this. It is a very big concern of Commissioner Abel's. We have put in the budget for a trial of some lights that turn on. Basically, they're water activated and they flash. The main streets where you saw the flooding were state roads, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Norsini, we were not permitted to put gates across those.
That's correct, Chief.
So I'll add to that just real quick. The high water warning system that Chris just mentioned, that'll actually be on the agenda next week for the trial on South Wayne Avenue out in the area by the fire company and the township's parking lot. The state's letting us do a trial run there. As for the gates, Chris pointed out they're not permitted on state roads, and we run into other complications when we talk about putting them into neighborhoods. I'm not sure our residents are going to want giant floodgates in their front yards, not just for the aesthetic purposes, but might hurt resale. So those were some of the roadblocks that we were running into when we were having discussions with folks about various locations. The one other thing I'll talk about with the truck, and Chris pointed this out, and I don't want it to be understated, is it's not only safer for those making the rescues, it's going to be safer for those, unfortunately, being rescued that are caught in those positions. And with the truck being what it is, we can also move around town. The boat is great when the flood is by the boat, but it takes a lot of maneuverability and manpower to move that around. This vehicle, as you could see in those videos, can move from location to location very quickly based on calls for service. So if we have someone on Bryn Mawr Avenue where we had significant flooding last month, we rescue that person and then a simultaneous call comes in for Briarwood, we can quickly move that vehicle up to the next location without a ton of effort. And the lights and the package that is on tonight's agenda is going to help that vehicle move through the open roads safer, because it'll be, the lights and the sirens will be on it as with any other safety vehicle. So that is critical as well.
Are you finished, Commissioner Booker? Do you mind if I ask a question? Okay. So, Bill, thank you, because your statement just answered the question I was going to ask, because I know in the last storm, certainly there were multiple locations at almost the same time where people needed to be rescued. You mentioned a couple of those roads and the streets that are over by where I live. And that seems to be happening, certainly a lot more frequently. Water rescues on Bryn Mawr Avenue, I'm going to say, in the past 4 months, we've had to do that at least twice because of storms and certainly other locations in the area. So, we are seeing the intensity of these storms. We're seeing them more frequently. So I think this vehicle is definitely an advantage to the help and support. So, and it only cost us the vehicle itself only cost us $400 to get it to begin with. Am I right?
Yes, ma'am. It was $450 to be a part of the program, and we're still eligible for if we come up with something that we were to need that they have in surplus. So the vehicle then needs the upfit. The one thing I don't have a price in is we did put tires on it, and our mechanics, correct me if I'm wrong, are able to work on they're able to work on the vehicle, which is a major cost reduction. It does not have to go to a special plant. Matter of fact, one of the mechanics went with the police sergeant to Connecticut.
And I don't mean to put you on the spot. I don't know if any of the gentlemen here can answer this, but how many calls during Hurricane Isis, is that the way you say it? I forget. How many calls did you respond to? And they were certainly township-wide, so we're certainly looking at areas in 2nd Ward, we're looking at 6th Ward, we're looking at 4th Ward. I know Bryn Mawr Avenue in 5th Ward was flooded, so how many calls did you respond
I can tell you that the fire company responded to more than 40 calls in a very short period of time.
We pulled, I believe, 8 people out of cars, and you're correct. We were from North Wayne Avenue, the 900 block Conestoga Road, 700 block of East Lancaster Avenue. We were down on Bryn Mawr Avenue, Darby Bailey Road. So we were covering the entire township, and we were pulling people out of the cars.
Thank you.
And South Wayne, yes, South Wayne is actually a deep one.
I'd just like to share that a friend of mine was caught, not in our township, but was caught in a flash flood, a road she didn't know, and it came sort of so quickly. She was able to pull two women who did not know how to swim from her car and get them to the roof and and she swam to go get rescue. So, I mean, we're talking about real lives, incredibly dangerous situations, and the faster that we can get to people, I mean, we're lucky we haven't had a loss of life this way, and I really appreciate all your efforts, knowing that the trauma of my friend and what she went through, I can only imagine it's going to get worse as our storms keep coming and new areas of flooding are popping up around the township. So thank you for your efforts.
Chief, one final question. Will this vehicle be contained to Radnor Township, or is it going to provide mutual aid, Broomall, Berwyn, Gladwin, Lower Marion? Any thoughts to that?
I would say that it's dynamic, Commissioner. You know, in the fire service and the needs, if it's dry here and Conshohocken has an unusually high flooding level, then we would assist. But our policy is like with our motorcycle team, our SWAT guys, it's always Radnor Township first. So I hope that answers your question, but we would also not let somebody perilously have a problem if we could assist in that avenue or that effort.
Sure, so Chester Fire Board or Monco possibly could call for it at some time.
Yeah, at some point in time, because I think what it would be is and now that we're working together, again, as sort of that Office of Emergency Management where we're staying in touch with each other, we would confirm with Radnor Fire, we confirm with the police staff, Mr. White's office, and as long as we were good, we would proceed.
Okay, thank you, that helps.
So I'll first say that I was skeptical, and that's when this was first proposed about a year and a half ago, and that's on me. It's definitely proven to be literally a lifesaver. So it's something that I think everybody here can support. Just to confirm, our mechanics can fix this, so it doesn't have to be. They can fix it in the bay and at the maintenance center. Am I correct on that? And get parts and no problem.
Yes, sir. It's a standard Caterpillar engine.
Okay. And the parts are not necessarily easy to get, but not hard to get. It's not a.
It's not military specific. It's a vehicle that's built to military specs, but it's the same as a commercial vehicle can be.
Okay. And so the unit, the vehicle, I think you said, has about 5,000 miles on it. So it's 10 years old. So the body may go before the engine, so to speak, if it rusts out. But what typically is the lifespan of this vehicle, assuming that we're going to not be putting, we'll only be putting maybe, hopefully, less than a couple hundred miles a year on it, would be my guess.
Yes, I think they have extremely low mileage. This is built beyond, as you saw, it's just sort of build is to military specs, which is often double of the commercial industry. And I'm kind of picking a number there, but obviously significant. Part of that bid that you see in front of you is for painting it to help preserve it. And then depending on, once we're done with it, if we find a space that's undercover that will help its longevity, then we would take a look at that. I anticipate the truck, and we've never had one before, and it is entering very dirty, kind of crazy water conditions. So I'm going to say at least 10 years of service. And then if we were to get another one, or we solve all the flooding problems, whichever one comes first, then we would, some of the equipment would be transferred to another vehicle. So our police cars, we call it an upfit. They flip all of the equipment. The light bars are now on their third series of cars. We don't buy new stuff unless it was broken and can't be repaired.
Okay, so if there's the lift bay or the lights, if it could fit on the new unit, you would do that as well. That's important. Okay, yeah, that answers my question. I will just say, from a board standpoint and from a stormwater waiver standpoint, when you see that rain, it's great to have this, but I think that there are multiple there are multiple parts in this, and I think that climate change is one. I think our stormwater waivers are another when you look at the bigger picture when you have some of these floods.
So we just jumped in and started talking about this without moving, so I will so move. Is there a second? Okay, we've already had commissioner comments, so is there any additional staff comment? Hearing none, is there any public comment?
Sarah Pilling from Garrett Avenue. I really appreciate the township being proactive on this. You simply should not wait until 2021 when you have it in the budget, because we already have 6 hurricanes in the Atlantic Basin right now, and we have no idea where they're going or how powerful they're going to be. And they are more powerful. This is part of climate change. With warmer water, we're going to have more moisture in the air. We're going to have bigger storms, and they're unpredictable. We're not getting 4 days of half an inch of rain each day for 4 days. we're getting 6 inches at once. So we need to be proactive with this, and I thank you for doing that.
Is there any additional public comment? Hearing none, I will call the vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously with Commissioner Abel not present. Moving on to item 5C, resolution number 2020-103, authorizing the transfer of $446,000 in excess general fund balance at December 31st, 2019 to the capital fund to provide financing for the Harford Trail, Montrose intersection, and Kreuzberg facility projects. I will so move. Is there a second?
Second.
Hearing the second, I'm going to ask, Bill, is this you?
Yeah, I'll take this one, because this is really something that I worked on back in February, which seems like yesterday. It's hard to believe that it's September and that much time's gone by. But in the board packet, I included a lot of the nitty-gritty details on the source of funds and the movement of money. Ultimately, where we're at is the board has voted to move forward with the township's engineering share for the Montrose intersection, as well as prior boards had borrowed a significant amount of money for the improvements at the Hartford Trail. What we're looking to do here is there's a little bit of gap financing needed for the Hartford Trail based on the inspections that will be necessary during the constructions and any contingency that comes up. The Montrose intersection, if you'll recall, was something that Lower Merion agreed to share the cost with the township at roughly 50%. This would be coming up with the Radnor Township share of the 50%. And then the Kreuzberg Center, the mainline school night had approached the township earlier this year about the same time, requesting for $64,000 in funds to assist them with some exterior repointing of the Kreuzberg Center, which obviously is a building that the township owns. So agreeing to share the cost on making some exterior improvements there seems reasonable. So what this piece of legislation does is it would take the $446,000 from the general fund to the capital fund and specifically earmark those dollars for those projects. In the event, say, a project comes in under what the estimates are, those dollars would remain in the capital fund and could be reappropriated to other projects. But again, these, the amounts that were identified for this transfer is based on the engineering estimates that we have for all three.
Is there any commissioner comment?
Hi, I would like to comment on the light at Montrose. This is a project that's been based on the traffic study on County Line Avenue, County Line Road, and the decision to place a light in order to help with speeding and helping to cross a very busy road was the best proposal. Lower Merion did, on a sort of leap of faith that we were going to pay for half of it, they budgeted for their half already. We did put some money towards the design phase already, and I think it's just a matter of finding this funding, which I appreciate, Bill, that you got creative and were able to find some funding for this important project. So I would ask my fellow commissioners to join me in voting yes on this resolution in whole, but specifically my interest is in the light at Montrose.
Sure. So, Maura, as you know, that our wards share that Montrose intersection, and this is definitely something that that I know that you've been working hard on prior to you stepping on. Something that I've worked. There's countless accidents. You've seen pictures. You have that nasty hairpin curve by Arthur faster road, so anything to slow down traffic. I personally like the idea of making 3 lanes, a middle lane, which is kind of a turning lane, and then you have one larger lane for going east, one larger lane going west, and then I guess they had in those specs initially some biking lanes, but I guess that was kind of mixed. But any way or anything to make that area safer, you're looking at really 3 different townships, because Haverford is a little bit toward past that. You have a lot of college kids. You have I know that my son, who is 12, tells me that he wants to bike up to the 7-Eleven there, and that's usually a fight of no, because it is absolutely too dangerous. And by the Yang Ming, it's a new restaurant. What is that, a 5 or a 6-way intersection? I don't even know. So I agree. It's definitely something that you have support definitely from the east end of the township.
I just had a quick question on the Kreuzberg Center. I thought when they came to us last year and they talked about this project, we did build that into the budget. Am I losing my mind?
So it was initially built into the money that we were allocating for capital this year. If you recall, under the initial budget proposal, then during the public portion of the budget discussion, the amount of the tax increase was reduced. And as part of the amendments necessary on the expense side, all of the non-fleet and departmental capital was suspended, which included this. So this just puts that one piece back in.
Thank you. Confirming I'm not going crazy.
Is there any additional commissioner comment? Is there any staff comment? Is there any public comment? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor of resolution number 2020-103, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously with Commissioner Abel not present.
Can I just make one comment? So as part of looking back in all the information around these items, I found a really nice piece that had been done, I believe, last January, updating us on all of the projects in the 2016 bond as well as the 2019 bond. And I'm just wondering if we could revisit that and provide an update on that update, because I know a lot of those projects have moved forward or continue to move forward. So it's a really helpful piece. And I remember when you guys did it, and I would like to see an update of that, if at all. If the board is interested in that, it might be useful for especially the newer board members to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. We will do that.
Okay, we are now on the Harford Trail. Resolution number 2020-99, Harford Trail, authorizes the award of the construction contract to G&B Construction Group, Inc. in the amount of $348,008.77. I will so move. Is there a second?
Second.
I'm going to suggest that we go a little bit out of order and take you, sir, first, rather than debating among the commissioners, and that way you can come and give us the balance of your presentation. You'll still have 5 minutes, but I imagine there's going to be some questions for you. So since we've had a chance to review your letter, maybe your first question for the commissioners should be, do you guys have any questions that I can answer? Without speaking for you.
Commissioner Larkin, can I just make one caution to the board? Both Mr. Peroni and his co-counsel have threatened to sue the township if the bid is not awarded in their client's favor. So, I mean, the facts are what the facts are. And his client's been disqualified by the staff, but ultimately it's up to the board to make that decision. I think there's, Steve, is $11,000 difference between the two bids? Is what I was looking at. About 11,000?
Roughly, yes.
11,000, Kenny being low.
Yes, yeah. Kenny was lower by $11,000. So anyway, just, and you have 5 minutes, sir.
I wouldn't characterize our position as threatening the township with the suit. I would characterize it as exercising Kenny's legal rights, which I don't equate with threatening the township.
I was about to say exactly that. You are offering to exercise your legal rights. I
Yes.
got it.
Now, having been limited to 5 minutes, are there any questions that the board, the commissioners may have? We have submitted the cover letter of my co-counsel, and also I submitted on the 8th my letter with attachments, which is part of his submission, but it's only contained in the larger group. It's not in the short form letter. Have any questions about either my September 8th letter or co-counsel's letter that was faxed earlier today, and that fax contained about 100 pages, which were exhibits. Exhibit 1 was relative to the bid that Kenny submitted. Exhibit 2 was the 4 pages that were admitted from the Penn bid submission. And the third exhibit was my letter that you have in front of you with the exhibits, which you have. And the last is self-explanatory. Our basic position is this. Pardon? Oh, I'm sorry. Our basic position is this, that the 4 pages that are missing are duplicative of his submitted bid, Kenny's submitted bid. And what I mean by that is the items that were contained in the missing pages were already in the downloaded submission in his initial bid. They were there. It's just that the 4 pages more or less capitulated that information, and it was duplicative. It was not separate. It didn't interject anything. It didn't harm the township, didn't change his bid, did not give any advantage to Kenny by allowing to add those 4 pages, which he did immediately after it came to his attention that those 4 pages were missing. He was told by Mr. Capella that these 4 pages were not there. Kenny's secretary immediately, within 1 hour of that telephone conversation, hand-delivered those 4 pages to Mr. Capella, and he had them in his possession. But again, it's not like they were added documents to what had already been submitted. It was duplicative. And specifically, without having the time to do so, what I mean by being duplicative and where were they in the original bid compared to the missing pages, I ask you to look at Mr. Kreiser's letter that you have the cover sheet to. And if you turn to the second page, on the bottom of the page, you'll see 4 bullet points. And that will tell you where in the missing pages that information was in the original submission, the original bid submission. The original bid submission is Exhibit 1, which is in the main document that I presented. Also, you have that original bid that he made. Exhibit 2 are the 4 pages that were missing. And I actually have a copy of that as well. Let me give you that. If I can find my mask.
So these are 4 pages that were missing? Yes.
you're asking me, okay, where are the missing items in these 4 pages? Where is it in the original submission of his bid? Take a look and look at the 4 bullet points on page 2, and that'll give you as clear and as concise location of where the missing information of these 4 pages is found in the original documents. So, also, what we're talking about here, we all know we're a country of laws and not men. So we have to look at what's the case law in this case. And in the case that is leading in this area is a case called Gatos, and it's cited in Counsel Kreiser's brief. And in order for a bid to be defective...
You have 1 minute.
Pardon? Sure. Yeah, if you look, I'm quoting from his letter, the first paragraph on page 2. In Getna, the Supreme Court puts limits on awarding authorities' discretion, holding that a bid is defective must result in rejection of the defective bid only where, 1, the defect would deprive the public owner, in this case Radnor, of its assurance that the contract will be entered into, performed, and guaranteed according to its specific requirements, and 2, the defect would provide non-complying bidders with a competitive advantage over the other bidders. Kenny had absolutely no advantage over the competing bidders with these 4 pages being missing from that initial submission of the bid. And also, the township was not denied any assurance, and therefore, the bid, as Kenny submitted, should be accepted and saves the township $10,000 or $11,000, whatever the exact number is. And to hold his bid defective for reasons that are insignificant and what I would call de minimis infraction is silly. And not only is it silly, it's not to the best interest of Radnor Township, because Kenny is the lowest bidder. Kenny is a responsible contractor. There's no issue as to that. And also, he submitted a responsive bid. So therefore, I asked this board to sustain our objections, grant Kenny this contract, and save this township approximately $11,000.
Attorney Peroni, one question. Several questions. One, did the bid from Kenny change between the original bid and the second time it was bid after all bids being rejected? Was it the same number?
It was lower. His second bid, you're talking about the first bid was rejected.
Right, but you're talking to Mike, though.
The first bid was rejected because the township, I thought, from what I know, thought it was over budget. So all bids were rejected.
All bids were rejected.
Then it was rebid. Kenny came in with the lowest bid again.
But it was the lowest bid, but the number changed.
Yeah, his bid was lower.
Lower. Well, then why was it that you're saying that the first bid, the bid form on the first bid was the exact same information? It changed between the 2 bids.
No, the first bid stands on its own. I don't think there's any issue.
Well, you're saying that you're saying that the 4 pages that were not submitted for the second bid had been submitted the first time.
No, I'm not saying that.
All right, because you gave me the bid form right here.
Yeah, those were the missing documents.
But this is the bid form. That's like the main thing for a bid.
But that was the second. I'm talking about the first 4 pages, or that deals with the second.
Commissioner Booker, can I just clarify some of the, here's what happened. The township puts a bid out, everybody goes to Penn Bid and uploads what's required in the invitation to bid. Okay, the first document in the invitation to bid is the bid form, okay? So once the deadline passes, then the township goes to Penn Bid, and you can't upload anything, and they look at it, and everybody can look at the bids at that point. It's like opening a paper bid. so everybody, including Kenny, can see what the bids are. This, and if you look at it, includes a lot of representations. It includes all the numbers. Whether they're somewhere else in the bid document or not, it's here. It's mandatory under the instructions. So when they find out that someone didn't upload the bid, this page, they bring this handwritten document to the township. Whether or not, you know, the numbers were changed or not changed, I don't think they were changed. I think they were the same numbers. But everybody else followed the bid instructions except Kenny, and the township's been pretty consistent. You know, if you don't comply with the bid instructions, even though you might be the lower bidder, it's called you have to be the lowest responsible and responsive bidder. Responsive means that you've responded to the bid requirements by doing what you're supposed to do. The case that they cite as authority is a Pennsylvania Supreme Court case, actually out of Delaware County, and it dealt with a bid where the bid requirements were that we wanted a bid bond from an A-rated company. Well, the lowest responsible bidder submitted everything, submitted all the paperwork, but submitted a bid from a B-rated company. The school district, I think in that case, threw out that bid, and the Supreme Court said there's no harm, no foul from an A to a B. They both accomplished the same thing. It's still a proper bid. But they had uploaded everything on that bid and submitted everything. Here, this wasn't submitted at all until after the fact. So
the bid form was submitted for the first bid that was rejected when all bids were?
that was in January, and that was rejected for 2 reasons.
Right. I understand, but at that time, Kenny submitted the bid form with?
I believe so.
In January.
I believe so. I didn't.
Then all bids were rejected, so we put it out again.
And it had to go.
Everybody had to rebid in August for the new revised project, and they needed to put in the bid form, which they didn't do. And you're saying it wasn't the one from January; it was just late.
I'm saying in the second.
It's hard to mic.
In the second rebid bid by Kenny, he omitted those 4 pages. There's no doubt about the omission of those 4 pages. Were those 4 pages in his original bid that was rejected? I believe it was, and I think council has just indicated it was in his original bid that all bids were rejected. It was the second one that didn't contain these 4 pages. But my problem with council is he's relying on form, all form, not substance. There is no complaint about any of the content of what's on those 4 pages. He's complaining as to form. The Kenny's bid should be just discharged and disqualified because those 4 pages just were not submitted. Not that there was any content problem or substantive problem, just the fact that the form wasn't submitted. Ipso facto, he's saying the ball game's over. I don't agree with that.
I understand, but so that's why I'm asking. In January, if it was exactly the same, that would be a supporting factor for what you're saying. But you're saying, well, it was in January, but it was different. So what I'm understanding is that this was not included with the bid as was required, and it actually does have a lot of information, including the full breakdown of all of the numbers and certain other information and a seal. So if you were saying, well, we submitted it in January, it's exactly the same, you don't need it again, that would be a reasonable argument. But it's a different bid, a lower number. You needed to submit it again, is what I'm getting to.
Commissioner Booker, here's my point. That missing information as to those items listed in there, unit values, those values were in his original bid that was submitted.
It was only a lump sum number, though.
The numbers are in there. It's just that it wasn't contained.
Okay, let me ask that question then. So my understanding of it is that when I look at the other information, that just the bid form, it looked like it was just the number that came through. And if our engineer was looking at just the numbers, the raw number that came through, he would have no way of evaluating your raw number versus the other because you didn't supply the other supporting documentation. because, and that's why this is necessary, because even though your number came through with all of those numbers incorporated in there, how was the engineer supposed to know how you came to that number if you don't give them the backup?
Because it was already in the original bid. It was part of it.
Commissioner, if I can help you there. So when you bid on bid electronically, you fill out the bid form, the line item bid form. The line item bid form on bid is the same as that handwritten bid form right there.
Right. And that's my
If I may.
But there's other items in those pages other than the bid form, which the solicitor can talk to you about.
So, Mr. Kenny is familiar with the process to submit a bid. He had done so in January and checked all the boxes and submitted all the proper paperwork. I imagine that he also submits bids for other projects.
You know, if you're asking me whether Kenny is a seasoned contractor.
Well, I'm
or
asking whether he
has-
knows how to submit the bid. He did it once correctly and once incorrectly.
This was a inadvertent oversight in those 4 pages not being submitted. Whether they got caught in the word, in the scanning or the download, like sometimes it does, I don't know the answer to that. But I do know that the 4 pages were missing, and Kenny is a responsible contractor who's a responsive bid. I'm feuding with counsel on that. And also, he's a responsible contractor. And remember, look, the issue here, we can't get far afield. The issue here in the Gatos case is that test that I gave you. Kenny gained no advantage by not saying the same thing twice. And Radnor was not denied of any assurances. Kenny, information was confirmed once. It didn't need to be confirmed again. And he certainly didn't gain any advantage over any other contractor.
So
There's
I'm
no
not
issue.
seeing in your exhibits anywhere where that same information from the cover bid, from the bid form appears.
You have to
So
look.
to Commissioner Booker's point, you know, there's a lot of information in the budget that's provided in the bid form, and I know I don't have the whole proposal, but everything you gave me, I'm not seeing this in any other format. So
What I'm asking you to do is, and I would have preferred, because time restraints in submitting this based on your meeting tonight and what we wanted to communicate our objection. If you look at Council Kreiser's September 14th letter, and again, I point you to page 2, the middle of the page, and the 4 bullet points that appear. Now, what you need to do is take a look at the document I just gave you regarding those 4 pages that were missing, and compare it to Exhibit 1 that's attached to the thing.
sure, that's what I'm asking you to show me. So if you can show me something in your exhibits that has this same information on it, I would appreciate that. Because I think this is what you were getting at, right, Commissioner?
Yeah, but Steve said that was on the pen bid. So I guess what was, but Steve also said certain other things were missing, though. So I guess.
So our solicitor, when we discussed this, yes, we agree that the line item bid that's in those 4 pages is also what's on pen bid. But I believe the term the solicitor used, there were legal representations on those other documents that required it to be submitted.
And pen bid allows you to hit submit with an incomplete document?
So if you're on pen bid, we always stress to the contractors to make sure you upload everything you need to upload. Melissa Kahn does a fantastic job. There's actually a checklist in the bid package. It says you must upload these things. But you can upload everything or nothing. It takes your upload and then we go through it.
Okay.
Yeah, pen bid doesn't, it's the township's invitation to bid, which we advertise, which then they have to take, and we set up the bid room or whatever, however it works on pen bid with our numbers, and then they've got to take the invitation to bid, which is a fairly lengthy, it's 46 pages, the whole invitation to bid. First document is his bid form, which has the numbers to break down the unit prices, but it also has, a lot of representations on the front page that the bidder is representing the following, 1 through 10. So that's not duplicated anywhere. And it's a harsh remedy to someone like Mr. Kenny, but that's what happens when you don't respond to the bid. You're at risk of losing the bid, even though you might be the lowest.
My position is that he did respond to the bid. The information on the 4 pages is within the other part of the submission of the bid that he downloaded through Penn Bid, and he can argue that it is a substantive defect, but when you look at that Gatos case, and I'm not going to repeat again, the 2 tenants.
Last question.
It doesn't call for a rejection of this bid. It's the best interest of Radnor to save $10,000, go with a responsive and a responsive.
Mr. Perone, let me ask a couple questions. Let me ask the first one to our solicitor. Do we have to accept the lowest bid? If there was a better contractor, could we go with a better contractor, or is it strictly the sole criteria is price?
No.
So
it's the lowest.
It has to be the lowest?
Responsible and responsive bidder.
I guess when you do that, go on the website, I mean, what's preventing Barron right there? Sorry, I'm calling on you, from putting a bid out there and you have no knowledge whatsoever, but you can do a good job.
Well, there's an investigation that usually gets done with every contractor.
Okay.
If the contractor has defaulted on 5 bids in the last 6 years, then that would be a non-responsible contractor.
Okay, so there's no other, I mean, there's objective and subjective, but.
So Commissioner, part of the bid package is the contractor has to supply a list of their past jobs, references, bank statements, bid bond is security, so it's, unless Mr. Gemmer can obtain a bid bond from a surety, as well as provide a list of recent jobs and 3 contacts that we can go and investigate his company with, he wouldn't make it through the process.
All right, you understand my point. There's one thing that you said, Mr. Perone, that for me is somewhat, I take pause when I hear the word inadvertent oversight. A mistake is a mistake. And if we do hire you, we're starting off on the wrong foot, okay? And we're starting off that it's our bad, but it's your fault. We're potentially going to seek all remedies, and this is how we start this relationship. I don't know if you've done any work with Radnor in the past, but I don't contract. I have a little bit of real estate. I don't contract as much as this. As much as, a project of this, it's several $100,000. But if someone is using the word inadvertent oversight and we're going to seek all remedies, I take a step back and I'm like, do I really want to be in a partnership with this and for a large stake of money when it's really only a $10,000 difference? Now, with that being said, you're saying to do what's best for the township, okay? And $10,000, $11,000, that is a lot of money. That is a lot of money in a COVID environment. But my question is, and I'll ask, and this is something that I touched on with our solicitor, is you're going to seek potentially a legal remedy or legal recourse. The number 2 bidder, who's $10,000 or $11,000 higher, could seek a legal remedy or recourse. So now we have to decide, all right, it's $11,000, whatever we save by going to you, we may have to pay in a legal fee fighting off another, dealing with a lawsuit from another contractor. So with me, I'll just say when I kind of put this piece of the puzzle together, I think it's unfortunate, but as soon as I hear legal remedies and stuff like this, I am very taken back, and I'll listen to everybody else. I feel that I have heard what you've said, but this would be and I've listened to what the staff has said, this will be a real tough pill for me to swallow when it comes to allowing this. And I think it sets a bad precedent for other contractors going on. So I'll stop there, but feel free to chime in.
Could I quickly respond? You took a question about me saying inadvertent mistake. Oversight. That inadvertency is relative to a missing download of documents. It has nothing to do with the quality of his work. And as Mr. Norsini has noted, if you look in that bid, which is Exhibit 1 in the thick pack, there's a whole list of contracts that he has had with success. So his work is above reproach, and he is a responsible contractor. I had a conversation with Mr. Rice, and I don't want to take something out of context during our conversation, but he mentioned to me that there was, I think the words were, knew of Kenny and didn't have a problem regarding any of his work. So this isn't an issue of his work quality or him not being a responsible contractor. That's not the issue. It's the issue of these documents being missing, but they're insignificant. And the other thing is, I would say this to you. The other thing is that you have to look at the whole picture and not just, this 4 missing pages, because they, as I said, they were in the original submission of the other part of the contract. So, and not only that, you just can't say, okay, well, you're going to get sued from the other end, or you're going to get sued from us, blah, blah, blah. You have to look at the case law. And what's the standard here that's going to apply in court as to what constitutes a disqualifying bid? That's the Gatus case that I have cited to you, and it's analyzed in that September 13 letter of Mr. Kreiser. So I say to you, we have to look at what the case law is, what does it say, what's the guidance there, because that's what the court's going to do in making a determination.
And we would have to pay our lawyer to go to court, which is exactly to your point, for $11,000. And I don't know what the fee would be to go to court, who pays for it. I'm not a lawyer. What we have on retainer or not. Again, this is just not a good way to start a business relationship for a sum of, how big's the contract? 400,000?
337,000
Yeah,
was Kenny's.
350,000. It's just not a good way. And I'm sorry, I'm sure he does do good work. Again, inadvertent oversight, it's still a mistake. Someone needs to take ownership, and that's a problem. No one wants to take ownership for anything. And it was your mistake, which you admit, but now it's our problem. And now it's potentially a legal problem. And just to me, that just does not bode well. I don't think it would bode well to all the stakeholders involved, which include our constituents and the other contractors that want to do business with the township. I just think it sends, I'll give you the last word, but I just think it sends a difficult message. I've said what I've had to say. I've listened to you, and like I said, I think my mind has been made up for the most part.
My conclusion to your statement is that you have to follow the law. What is the law? Not subjective opinion, but what is the law? When you look at that Gatos case, it's clear that Kenny does not have a disqualifying bid. That's the law.
So I'll just be brief, and certainly this is, it's not my intent to comment on Mr. Kenny's work or anything like that, but it would seem to me that PennBid is there to provide an apples-to-apples comparison so that everyone is uploading the information that they have, being responsive to the bids, and then that's the information that we use to make the decision. And if all of the information isn't there, then you can't compare apples to apples. So to me, again, it is, unfortunate, and for whatever reason, if it didn't upload, but we can only go with the information that we have at hand. And perhaps Mr. Kenny could, bid on something else in the future, but I, would have to say that, it is difficult for us to make a decision when all you have is everybody's same information. And to me, you can't, if you close it at a certain date, it would appear, if I'm looking at these informations, the bid time period is 60 days. Am I right, Mr. Norsini? Is it 60 days?
Correct, ma'am.
Okay, so 60 days to get all their information in and I guess make sure it's all uploaded properly and all of that, so.
I'm saying to you that the township did have the information. PennDOT had the information, all the information that's needed. And this other part that was missing, the 4 pages, is duplicative. I don't want to be duplicative myself.
I understand what you're saying, but I'm saying apples to apples for everybody else. Everyone else had it, so.
Is there any additional commissioner comment? Hearing none, is there any staff comment? Hearing none, is there any public comment?
I have just one more comment, just to be sure. Steve, you are recommending, you're recommending what's in the packet, which is the second highest bidder. You haven't.
Correct. So I'll just give you a real brief. So the process is the bids come into Penn Bid. They go to Melissa Kahn. She opens them up. She provides us with the Penn Bid bid summary, which is that line item bid, which the gentleman was speaking of. And she also points out any items, any errors, whatever you want to call them, oversights, mistakes that occurred. So she pointed this out to us immediately, that this was missing. So in those 4 pages is a handwritten line item bid form, which we have electronically. The other 2 pages are not a handwritten bid form. So yes, what we're saying is, based on the solicitor's recommendation, following the rules, at an expense of $10,832, we're recommending to go with the lowest qualified bidder per the solicitor, which would be G&B Construction Group.
And you concur with that?
Yes.
Attorney Peroni, our lawyer and our engineer are saying to go with the other. I appreciate your presentation. I understand what you mean, and, but you can imagine the position that we're in. What are we supposed to? It's difficult to take your against our professionals that we have in this kind of a format. It's difficult for me, at least.
I understand you have a solicitor who you pay to do his job and recommend. You have a solicitor paid to do a certain job, and you follow his guidance that you respect. I'm just saying here and reiterated a number of times that if you look at the controlling case here, Gatos, and that 2-prong test as to whether a bid should be disqualified, Kenny's bid should not be disqualified under the facts of this case, which I think we know. You know. So.
Okay, we were on public comment. Is there any public comment? Hearing none, I will call the vote. All in favor of resolution number 2020-99, say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously with Commissioner Abel not on the dais. Moving to ordinance number 2020-11. Thank you very much for the presentation. It was detailed and we appreciate it. Ordinance number 2020-11, introduction, amending the township zoning ordinance to provide setbacks for emergency generators and to provide regulations therefore. I will so move. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Mr. Norsini, is this you? Who can read us in on this?
Commissioner, that would be
Mr.
myself,
Mr.
yes.
Jansky.
Excuse me. So this ordinance was previously in front of the board. Staff was requested to prepare an ordinance to address emergency generators. Currently, our codes are deficient in specifically regulating generators. We do regulate accessory structures and we do regulate air conditioning units in most of our residential districts, but not emergency generators. So there has been some confusion and ambiguity as to how those are regulated. So staff was asked to put together an amendment to address specifically emergency generators. We did that previously earlier this year. It came in front of this board to introduce. There was a lot of discussion. At that point, it was sent to the Community Development Subcommittee of this board, where two specific issues were raised regarding setbacks. I think the original draft had it was a little too aggressive for some of the commissioners, and then defining where it can go on the lot in terms of side rear yard and front yard. So as a result of that meeting on June 29th, we made some additional revisions. We clarified the setbacks in all of the districts. So we provided a chart within the ordinance to provide specific setbacks. Those setbacks are primarily based on very similar setbacks to air conditioning units where those are provided, as well as then defining where the front yard and how the restrictions of locating emergency generators in the front yards would be applied. The remainder of the provisions that this board had previously seen remain, but those were the main changes to this code that's in front of you.
Is there any commissioner comment?
I'll start with commissioner comment. It's a very simple principle in my mind and in that of a lot of constituents in Ward 3 and others that I've talked to throughout the township. The very simple principle is that these generators, which are the size, shape, and equivalent of air conditioning units for the most part, have become extremely popular as flooding has increased, as these storms, which we've talked about this evening, become more and more likely this time of year. And as sump pumps, I have 3 sump pumps in my basement that are backed up by one of these generators. They're necessary. But at the same time, if I'm deciding either in new construction or in current construction or renovations of a house to put one of these in, I shouldn't be allowed to come and put it on your property line or close to your property line. They do fire up once a week. They're not much noisier than an air conditioning unit when they do start up, but they do run once a week. And when they are running, they're not always quiet, depending upon whether or not they've been properly serviced. I shouldn't be able to come and put that on your property line and not do anything about it in terms of landscaping and making it less unsightly. So I think that the board has provided feedback on this. Mr. Kuchansky has taken it under advisement that not all properties are created alike throughout the township. If I'm putting one of these in my property in Garrett Hill versus putting one in Ward 3, there are different considerations, but I think that these setbacks and the way that this has been amended provides for that. So I think that it's necessary, it's needed, and it's only fair throughout the township.
So Damien, is your concern noise or is it aesthetics being too close, having a
both
ancillary structure next to another neighbor?
Both.
Is there equally, both equally?
Depends on whether or not you're servicing your generator properly and having it properly oiled, properly maintained. It could be that it's unsightly. It could be that it's noisy. Depends on individual situations.
So I'll just say what I said before. I think it's great that it's not going to be in the front yard. I actually don't have a problem if it would be in the front yard, provided that you can't see it from the road. So if there was no exposure, if it was covered with some kind of shrubbery and a fence and you couldn't see it, and it just looked like a little shrub garden, fine. That part I don't mind. What I do mind is that as you said, some of them are noisy, some of them aren't. Some of them get noisy, okay? So I don't see a decibel level here. So when it comes to the property line, it could be right on the property line. No one sees it, and that's great. And it's quiet as could be. Or it could be set back 300 feet, and it gets old and not serviced well, and it's noisy as anything. So that's kind of the rub that I'm in, where there's no metric of noise. Just, you can't say, oh, I think it's noisy. I think it's noisy because I live next to it. You don't think it's noisy because it's yours. Or it helps you sleep at night when it kicks on, or during the afternoon. It's a white noise for you. So just based on that alone, I know that there's been a lot of work put into this. I know Kevin's put a lot of work into it. I know you've put a lot of work into it, and I know our committees have put a lot of work into it. But this comes down to one issue for me, which is noise, and I really don't feel that we're addressing that. We're addressing distance because we think that affects noise, but the answer is, what is noise, what is too noisy, what is not noisy?
Are we doing that with air conditioners?
You know what, it's just one, I don't want to add one more thing, you know, make it one more thing that's
I'm just
complicated.
asking in terms of parity,
no, I
though.
hear you. I mean, I hear you, but just, that's kind of how I see it, so.
I don't think this addresses the landscaping either, right? This is not, doesn't cover that. So aesthetically, it is where it is, but it doesn't require anybody to put bushes or other screening around it.
Commissioner, I could address the landscaping and screening issue. These generators require a certain amount of airflow around them to operate properly. And when you don't have that, they tend to overheat and they degrade and then become noisier. So requiring any kind of landscaping or screening is actually detrimental to the proper functioning of these units.
Yeah, but you could put a tree or a bush 10 feet away from the HVAC or the generator. Yeah, I mean, so I've got some wordsmithing issues with this. It looks like in section C, it says that emergency generators are only to be used in specific instances for the duration of the event, but it's unclear to me whether that means that they're only to be used during those specific instances, or if they can be used at any time, but if there is a power outage, it's only for the duration of the event. And my confusion is amplified by the next paragraph, which specifically discusses alternate situations in which you can use the device, which is for testing or maintenance cycles of emergency generators. Paragraph E says standby generators that are permanently wired into load centers shall be in accordance with, but not limited to, the National Electrical Code, the Pennsylvania Uniform Construction Code, UL, and the manufacturer's specifications. I don't know what the not limited to means, and I have concerns about what that's going to end up doing. I also just generally have questions about what happens to a corner lot which has 2 front yards. And to be blunt, I'm thinking very specifically about my own house. I have 2 front yards because I'm a corner lot, because the house is a zillion years old. It was constructed way too close to the neighbor's lot line. I think on one side I've got like 5 feet worth of setback to the house. And then in my rear yard, which we use as a front yard, obviously, because otherwise you're right in the road, we've got a patio that goes the whole way. I'm not really interested in installing an emergency generator because I'd prefer to use solar myself, but there are going to be other people in the township who have similar situations, and I kind of feel like you want to have something for both a corner lot and for pre-existing homes that don't meet the existing setbacks. I'm fine with trying to amend this tonight. I'm fine with sending this to planning for their feedback. Whatever is the pleasure of the board. Or I can just be outvoted. I may not be the person who wins on that issue.
So,
Go ahead. I'm all for amending this evening if we can agree that and agree to vote and send it to planning.
Okay, and I should clarify, Damien has proposed this, and he's been extraordinarily generous about pushing it from meeting to meeting to meeting in the past in order to accommodate other items that were more emergent at the time and get us out of here early. So I don't want to delay this any more than necessary. My proposed amendments would be, number 1, to supplement paragraph B to add a exception for pre-existing houses that do not meet the existing setback requirements. And my proposal would be simply to require that the generator not break the plane of the house as against the closest adjoining property. So basically, if you've only got 5 feet between you and your next property, your generator can be 5 feet from that property, but you can't break the plane of the house. I propose that paragraph C be amended such that emergency generators shall only be used in a power outage or emergency situations and shall only be used for the duration of the event. And I would add to the final, to the end of paragraph C, an exception, except as necessary for testing or maintenance as described below, which would then accommodate paragraph D. I would subtract the but not limited to in paragraph E. And I think that that addresses all of my concerns with this draft. So I've made a motion for amendment. Is there a second?
Well, can we vote on them separately?
Sure, that's fine. Let's take it from the beginning. I'd propose what I discussed about not breaking the plane of the house if you have a pre-existing
Can you explain
nonconformity
that? What
with
do you
respect to
mean?
the
What do you
setback.
mean can you explain that again, the plane of the house? What is that?
If your house is less than the required setback away from the next closest neighbor,
Okay.
and my proposal would be that you could build up to your to the line of your house,
Okay.
but
so-
no farther.
Okay, so hypothetically speaking, and this is where I'm gonna come in from Garrett Hill or from Conestoga Village, if there's 5 feet between a house and it's a driveway that they don't use because it's dirt, and you own one half the driveway and the other owner owns the other half of the driveway, you could put it right on the property line, so it's 5 feet
No,
away,
you
or-
wouldn't build to the property line, you would build to the plane of your home.
So, can I
'Cause
just?
I'm confused on this still.
So I just want, so I have some questions around this. I don't have the amendments, that you're offering up, and I'm not saying they're right or wrong. And my biggest concern around this whole thing, is it going to prevent anybody who wants to get a generator to get a generator? Because over in my ward, when the power is out all the time, and I've got residents right now texting me who have their power out for I don't know why, some reason the power is out. So this is, the addition of these generators is becoming very frequent. More people are getting them. So I don't disagree with the intent of it. Like, I think it is good to have some sort of, guidelines and whatnot, but I want to make sure, and I'll be honest with you, I don't know enough about this to say that this isn't something that is going to prevent somebody who wants a generator to get a generator, and to be able to install it, which I believe is something that people should be able to do. So
Correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin, and I appreciate what you're saying, but correct me if I'm wrong.
I wasn't finished. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So I just want to be sure that that is not the case with this. And again, I don't understand enough about it to say it is or it isn't. And I feel like some of the questions, the very specific questions that Commissioner Farhi is putting forward, would these be better addressed by the Planning Commission? Like, should planning take a look at this? I understand we want to get it done. I understand, Commissioner Enderle, you've been very patient in pushing this off. And I hate the idea to say, hey, let's send it to planning and add more time to that. But I do feel like perhaps it might benefit from that, and I would benefit from that as well. But so those are
Lisa,
that's kind of where I stand.
Thanks. Before you took my thunder, I was still in the middle of saying something. I'll just say, based upon what you're saying and based upon what Jack is saying, if you're going to add 3 things, I think that this needs to be absorbed and digested. And I'm fine with putting it on there. And I know that you don't want to hear to table it, but I think that really is the best thing to do. If we're adding 3, what I feel are substantial pieces to this legislation, we should have a little bit more time to digest. So I'm not opposed to what you want to put on there, but I wouldn't make a motion to table this until it can be absorbed. I know there's not a lot of people here, but until it can be absorbed. So I know you have a motion out there. I want to put a motion out there. I don't know what supersedes what, but I think that,
Well, no one seconded my motion, so right now it fails for lack of a second. You've now moved to table.
May I ask, Commissioner Fari, when you say table, are you also suggesting that we put it in front of planning, or just let us go and do our own
I think
research?
that we need to look way, and I don't, I think that we should table it. Maybe we bring this up in new business or old business. But planning is one option. Looking at what Jack is saying, and they may be very, very good add-ons to this. I don't know, but it just doesn't. I feel that we're cramming something through, and it just doesn't feel that this is the right thing to do. And I know that I know that it's been a long time with you, Damien, and you are patient, but it just feels that we're trying too hard with this.
So I'm just going to say, I don't believe we're cramming it through. This came to community development. We had about an hour-and-a-half conversation about generators. Just that's what committees do, is they do they get the sort of the big conversations done so that we can bring it forward. Kevin went back with those recommendations, reworked it. It's now been reworked again based on some conversation at the commission, at the board level. So, I'm just going to challenge you. It's not being crammed. It's been discussed over and over and over again. We may not be where we want to be with it, but there's been a lot of work done.
Can I make a suggestion? Because there's 3 or 4 different opinions as to what ought to be changed on this. It still has to go back to the Planning Commission under the MPC. It's a zoning amendment. You don't know what they may or may not do with this ordinance. So if individual board members want revisions to what's in front of you, send this to the Planning Commission. Let them start that process. You can't advertise it until they review it. It's got to go to the County Planning Commission. Send the Planning Commission your individual comments. Here's what I would like to see changed, and let them do their job in reviewing this as a zoning amendment. This is basically, what they're going to have to do anyway. And I'm afraid it goes there and it comes back and you have this discussion again 2 months from now. The same discussion.
I complete agree with you, Counselor. I appreciate that. I think that a motion to tabling it is, once again, pushing this off. I have no problem with taking a look at questions, raising those questions with Planning Committee, and sending suggestions, as Commissioner Borowski has suggested, as Commissioner Larkin has suggested, and concerns that Commissioner Farhi have. Tabling it is not dealing with it.
Well, then it sounds like maybe a motion to send this to planning. Okay. I will move then to send this to the planning.
I second.
I will call the vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Public comment. Public comment.
Yeah, I guess that's not an interlocutory motion. Not interlocutory. Whatever. It's late. It's 9:17. Let's have public comment on this. I think we know what staff wants to do with it. I think we know what the board wants to do with it.
And I would suggest it goes to the Planning Commission that, Jack, you had 3 or 4 edits to it, comments to it. If you want to send them to me, I can put them all in one document, whatever individual commissioners have. I'll get them to Mary Eberly. She's going to the Planning Commission. Here's what the commissioners' comments were, and they can take it from there.
Yeah, I think otherwise it's just going to beg for variances, a lot of variances. But
And that's just my one question. I'm sorry, Baron. Just, it seems very uniform, which is great, and and that makes it easy and simple to follow. But is every property so uniform? You know what I mean? And that's what, and I think Jack alluded to that. But that's what I'm concerned about. I want to make sure it's not something that is preventing people from getting a generator who want to get one.
Baron.
Thank you. And I'm not here to give a bid on the construction. Baron Gemmer, South Wayne Avenue. Thank you for allowing the public comment. First, I'd like to acknowledge the revisions, because as has been alluded to, this has been discussed, and the direction this went is quite a bit different than some of the original drafts, and I think it's starting to come more in line with the realities of what it takes to install a generator. Not that I don't have issues, but I just do want to acknowledge that. With that said, I don't necessarily disagree with Commissioner Farhi in terms of it's not really going to address the noise issue to any great extent. And actually, I won't speak for Kevin, but I know of the 1 to 2 dozen calls he may get a year on this, only a couple are for noise, and if it's running during an emergency, that's not going to address this either. And it also doesn't address the portable generators, and you don't want to make this so restrictive such that you move people toward portable generators, even if they have a permanently installed transfer switch and then they move the portable generator up, which can be closer to the property line, and they tend to be noisier for the same kilowatts. So you don't want to just push people to do something that's going to make the matter even worse and more impractical from their standpoint in terms of having to set it up. So one of the things I would like to, personally, I don't think it's addressing what you're trying to do, so I would not be passing this if I was in your shoes. But with that said, I'm going to talk about some of the things, if you are going to address it, that would make it better, or in this case, go to planning. The front of the house restriction, it really can't be an aesthetic issue because air conditioners are allowed in the front of the house. We have, as Commissioner Larkin alluded to, we have a rental property, it's R5. It's a corner property. The air conditioning units are in one of the front, not in the front yard setback itself, but they're in one of the front yards because there's no other place to put them in the side or the rear. And yes, they're covered by shrubbery a little better because they don't have the same restrictions that generators do in terms of clearance. So I think that's an issue in terms of having that even in there. It also becomes an issue because now, even in front of the house is still the buildable area in most cases, or to the side is buildable area or the side yard. So you're talking about an accessory structure not being able to be placed where the primary structure could be. And that's going a little counter to some of the MPC itself. You've got your buildable area and you're not even allowing an accessory structure going where the primary could go. I could build the house out farther for that. So I think that's a question. And I also don't think it'll mitigate, it won't make the noise any worse, and it might actually make it better. And per Commissioner Larkin's situation where he's got a house that's already 5 feet from the property line, if you're not going to break that plane, then you're either going to be going, assuming that's parallel to the property line, you're either going to go in front of the house, no closer than 5 feet, or to the rear of the house, no closer than 5 feet, because you can't do it to the side of the house without breaking the other restriction that you've already put in place. So I think that the right of being closer than the front plane of the house, I think that could potentially restrict people, and it certainly restricts where you could normally put primary structures as well as accessory structures. The other changes that I would look at would be if you look at I'm only looking at R1 through R5 because that's all I looked at originally, so I can't speak to some of the other zoning districts at the moment. But if you look at the R1 through R4, those are actually the same as the air conditioning restrictions, and those are 5 feet closer to the property line than the nearest setback would be in most of those cases. So you really need 5 feet from the house because you need 3 feet, typically 3 feet clearance, and then 2 foot wide generator. So you need to give people, if you're not going to restrict them from putting them in situations, 5 feet less than whatever the overall restriction is. So if your setback is 20 feet, then the generator could be 15 feet, and that gives them a chance to put it there because it's not only the clearance of shrubbery, it's also the clearance from openings and doors and dryer vents and things. So having that 5 feet. So I would, looking at R5, it's where it's 7 feet. That would really need to be 5 feet to give people in R5 a fighting chance of putting one in. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to have it. To wrap up then, also on the noise, on the maintenance portion, perhaps putting like no more than 30 minutes per week or something as opposed to just whatever the ambiguous language is in there. And also, people may want to hear it, like ours is Wednesday at 2 p.m., so I can hear it run when I'm working from home. with the hours you have, a lot of people may not be able to hear their generator when it goes through the test cycle, which could be important to figure out how it's doing. So I would either take that out and let the normal lawnmower, because it's less than a lawnmower when it's doing its test cycle, or at least add Saturdays during the same hour so someone could put it during that so they could hear how it's running. Mine only runs every 2 weeks to do that. Otherwise, they don't have a chance to hear how it's running to see if they need to do any maintenance on it besides what they've done.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Is there any additional public comment? Hearing none, calling the vote again. All in favor of sending this to planning, say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously with Commissioner Abel off the dais. Moving to ordinance number 2020-17, introduction, revising Chapter 262 towing, adding new definitions, fees, and regulations for private and duty towers in the township. I will so move. Is there a second?
Second.
John, is this you? We can kick it to somebody else.
It's me and whoever's here from the police department. This has gone through a couple iterations. This is introduction. I thought Chief Flanagan was going to address some aspects of this. But I've met, and Commissioner Abel met, and we've met on a couple different parts of this. And I believe the police department believes is comfortable with where this is. We added a lot of definitions in this ordinance. Some of the fees were raised. We had a situation where licenses were only being issued on an annual basis. You have two different types of tows. The duty tow, I think it was previously the existing code sent the license application to the manager and now goes to the superintendent of police. We added some additional criteria for the issuance of the license. So, there was a lot of sort of editing and reworking of some old language that had been in this ordinance for many, many years. If the board has any specific questions about reasons, I'm going to defer to one of the officers at the end of the desk here. But I think this is ready to go and to be advertised for your next available meeting.
So does, Chris, does somebody get notice? Or do you get a notice before somebody's car is towed? Or what, that was the big issue, that somebody tows the car without, and tells the police later. Are you getting an upfront call, or is that not the case?
Sir, that was brought up, you're correct. There was a concern of many when a sudden particular towing incident happened on private property. It brought to light how that occurred. However, at this time, to be specific, the Radnor Police Department is notified as of right now if a vehicle was towed off of private property for whatever reason, or repossession, they would notify the police department after, I'm going to use the word hooked. I think everybody knows what that means. It was hooked, and they would call shortly thereafter that occurred.
And this proposed doesn't change that.
Right. We're attempting to alleviate that with that. Another commissioner brought that up as a concern to pre-do it, but the police cannot stop, Commissioner, somebody hooking a car.
There is notification, though, Rich, in the ordinance. Let me point you to this. Under Section 3, if you go down to C, authorized towing services, paragraph 2 says notify the police department of the removal of the vehicle from private property before leaving the lot of such removal, providing the description and license number of the vehicle, And then that can be accomplished by dialing 911 and contacting the officer in charge. So there is a.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, that responds to the issue, I think.
Yeah, so it's in there. The other issue, if you go to the next paragraph, and this is something that, you know, that came up with Commissioner Abel, if towing outside of normal business hours, make themselves available for release for a period of 1 hour after leaving the lot with a towed vehicle and after notifying the police department. So a lot of times cars got towed on a Friday and they weren't open on Saturday. So a resident could not go, or whoever car was towed could not go on a Saturday and get the towed car released because they were closed. So they were stuck to wait till Monday because the car was towed on Friday. So, I mean, there were a lot of little upgrades to this that the department came up with, which we incorporated into here. So those two things really addressed the issue that came up in the spring, I think, with somebody that was, you know, sitting in Wayne looking for cars to tow. And some of the other, like I said, some of the other application requirements have been clarified. You know, any private towing contracts, if there's private towing contracts, we need to get copies of those. So anyway, it's been a lot of work put on this since this issue came up. Must have been like February or March, I guess it came up.
So, Chief Flanagan, this will not stop, but this will definitely put a big dent in predatory towing that, you know, I don't know if we were at a 6 or 7, maybe we're a 2 or a 3 now, where it's still going to happen, but we're making it a lot harder for those tow truck, those business that, you know, operate, you know, where that's how they get their revenue. That's not particularly, maybe I shouldn't say that we want some businesses more than others in Radnor, but I think that it's not a good feeling, and I don't think it helps our business district if someone gets towed. They're not going to want to come back. So if you could just, your thoughts on that?
Commissioner, that particular situation brought a couple of these things that John Rice had met with our traffic unit, Officer Pyrie in particular, seated next to me, and we're trying to avoid that at all cost. There are certain limitations, as you can see in this ordinance, of what, you know, private property owners have the rights to conduct business, have parking available, and our officers make sure that the signage, notification, and hopefully if you get your car back, if you have an accidental or you decide to take a risk of parking in a private lot that's posted, that we'll have that. But the predatory towing and some of the things that went on, I would say, correct me if I'm wrong, Officer Pyrie, that's the only incident we've had that has gone kind of off the charts with activity like that, and we were able to mitigate the problem. And none since then. Thank you, Ken.
Thanks. I'll just say real quick, because as a small business owner, parking is always tight, and you know, when someone wants to park in your spot and they don't go to that business, that's making it hard for you to pay your rent. So I understand from the business standpoint. I also understand from the whole economic standpoint of a business district. So I think it's good if you're happy that it weighs and balances everybody's interest, and I think it should be good.
So can I just ask the intent behind raising all the fees? Is that meant as a deterrent, or, you know, I mean, in some cases, yeah, it's only $5, but in some cases it's $50 or $25, and those are, and that will benefit the towing operators, correct? So what was our thought process behind raising all those fees, which will be for, you know, which will impact?
Yes, ma'am. We haven't touched the fees since 2015. We're just bringing up the speed with the rest of the towers out there.
So it's just bringing them in line with?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
are all the businesses aware of that there's a change pending, or this going to surprise the businesses in Wayne?
Actually, and I'll let Officer Pyre, I don't want to disclose any names. Some of the businesses actually were directly involved in this, and then we'll do a notification process. Overall, they're not going to see, they'll see the price changes and the notification changes. Most of the businesses are proactive, to Commissioner Farhi's point, where they just want to have their parking available. They kind of wish that this was not a necessary process. So anything that we can do to discourage having the tow happen in the first place, we've been supported very much by local businesses trying to work it out.
Is there any additional commissioner comment? Is there any staff comment? Is there any public comment? Hearing none, I will call the vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously with Commissioner Abel off the dais. Moving on to item G. We are skipping item G because it has been pulled, as I previously noted. Moving on to item H, ordinance number 2020-16, adoption, prohibiting the making of unnecessary and excessive construction noise during certain hours. I will so move. Is there a second?
So I'll second, and then I'd like to amend. Can I do that?
Sure.
Or go ahead,
Now,
Commissioner
before
Farr.
you do, can you give the history that we weren't able to pass it because we didn't have, what do you need, like a quorum of the people? And that's why you need a full quorum of the board. We had a quorum, pardon me.
No, we
I
passed
thought
it.
there was some logistic, John. What was
We
that?
introduced it.
It was an
introduced it.
introduction issue. There was a little bit of
Okay.
confusion the last time. So it was an issue of, I guess the introduction passed. So now it's back. Then it was advertised. Now it's back. In order to adopt it, you need the full 4 out of 7. Introduction, you didn't need the 4 out of 7. Thanks to Barron. Assistant Zoning Officer Gemmer.
Sorry. So what I would like to amend is I'd like to strike the last paragraph of section 1, paragraph A. So the one that says on Sundays and holidays, construction noise shall only be permitted between 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. I'd like to remain with what we have right now, which is no construction on Sundays and holidays, which is what we currently have.
So
I
just
don't-
striking the last sentence of paragraph A.
So, I'm sorry?
The
So we-
last sentence of
Yeah,
paragraph.
so we would just strike that paragraph, which would mean, so if we strike that paragraph, does that mean we just continue on with what we have, or we would need to change it?
That sentence?
We need to change it. The last sentence,
You strike that sentence, not that paragraph.
yeah, just the sentence, the last sentence.
Okay.
No, I said the last sentence. I'm sorry. So what I would like, if everyone looks at section 1, paragraph A, to strike the last sentence so that, or maybe we just add construction noise shall not be permitted between 10 or, what I want to do is keep what we have right now, which is no construction on Sundays and holidays. No construction noise, Sundays and holidays.
Best way to do that, on Sundays and holidays, construction noise shall not, strike only, replace it with not be permitted, period, strike between, et cetera.
Right.
That works. Thank you, Commissioner Booker.
So there's a motion to amend. Is there a second? I will second, okay. I'll call the vote. All in favor of the amendment, say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Amendment passes unanimously. Oh, sorry, I heard 2 nays? One nay, Commissioner Booker votes nay. The motion nevertheless passes 5-1 with Commissioner Abel not on the dais. Okay, is there commissioner comment on the amended ordinance?
So the big change now is we're changing it from 7:30 to 7 a.m. and 9 p.m. to 7 p.m.?
No, it's,
What's the existing right now for construction noise?
it's
7 a.m.
seven,
to 9
yeah,
p.m.
7, sorry, all right, so it's 7, that matches, 7 in the, 7 p.m. and 7, so the change now is, the first one, 9 p.m. is what it says today, and we're changing that to 7 p.m.
correct.
And for Mr.,
Smythe?
hold on. What's that?
Smythe?
Yeah. He's standing right here.
So then for Mr. Smythe, we wouldn't need to.
Yeah.
Now.
So for Mr. Smythe, so what we're talking, so originally this had Sundays already in there, and so he was interested in working on Sundays. So now Sundays is out. That's what the board just took that out of that. So just so you're aware, so you can comment. But the 9 p.m. This is just a little more restrictive now, and it really only applies to construction. It doesn't apply to landscape, as we discussed. So landscapers and individuals landscaping and doing other work, even maybe trees. We got an email from Ms. Morgan today about tree work being done, right? Tree work could be done. That's not construction, right?
Depends on how big the trees are, I think.
I thought you were going to work on the landscaping piece. Remember at our last
Well, I
meeting we
said
talked
I
about
said to
that?
duplicate that. I did say we would duplicate that, but I thought John understood. I mean, it was just a matter of duplicating it and saying landscape. But no, it's not in there. It didn't get in there, so it's not there now. So if we want it, we would have to add it at a separate time. All this is covering is just construction. Is all it is.
So I actually don't agree with that. Our ordinances say that titles and headings do not dictate the meaning of the ordinance, and this doesn't say anything about construction on my quick read other than in the title, Section 1, 200-5, construction work. So this literally would be any
Says-
type of machinery.
The third whereas says without excessive or offensive construction noise.
Understood, but the actual amendment to the ordinance would not include the term construction in the ordinance.
The interpretation that our police have and others have said is that it's at least Superintendent Flanagan has said to me, the interpretation is this only applies to construction, not other noise.
Understood. We'd be creating a new ordinance now. I'm not sure what the interpretation of the previous one would do to affect the new one. And like I say, if we want this to just affect construction, we should probably use the word construction in the language of the ordinance itself.
Well,
Doesn't section 1,
yeah, I think it
200-5
says construction.
say construction work?
It does, but that's the title and heading. And Section 1-8 says chapter and article titles, headings, and titles of sections and other divisions in the code or in supplements made to the code are inserted in the code and may be inserted in supplements to the code for the convenience of persons using the code and are not part of the legislation.
So then in paragraph A, would we need to just insert the word any type of construction, machinery, appliance, equipment, or hand tool which emits noise beyond the premise? So then it is specifically construction?
I think that would be the cleanest thing to do if we want to limit it to construction.
Well, I believe the intent of this is to, yes, limit construction noise.
Then I would move to amend paragraph A, section 1A. In the first sentence, following the words, the 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth full line down, equipment or hand tool is being operated or used, I would add in comma for the purpose of construction work, comma, and then leave on the rest of what's in there. I wouldn't object to doing so. Yeah, so then both of those. So I guess I'll move to so amend. Is there a second?
Can you just repeat where you've added it? You've added it to the,
Sure, it would now read, "It shall be unlawful for any person, firm, or corporation, or their agents or employees owning or occupying any building, premises, or other place in the Township of Radnor to operate or permit to be operated, comma, for the purposes of construction work, comma, any type of machinery, appliance, equipment, or hand tool which emits noise beyond the premise upon which the machinery, appliance, equipment, or hand tool is being operated or used, comma, for the purpose of construction work, comma, between the hours of 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. except for Sundays and township, state, or federal holidays, period." And then the previous amendment that we made would supersede the existing language in the second sentence, and I don't want to confuse the record by garbling that.
okay, I'll second that amendment.
Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay.
Nay, because I think it's unnecessary. That's already the interpretation that we have.
Okay. The motion to amend passes 5-1 with Commissioner Abel not on the dais.
All right, so this, again, the main issue with this is it continues the prohibition of construction on Sundays in all cases in the township, and it further limits construction on all other days. Previously, it was allowed until 9 o'clock. Now it's only allowed until 7 p.m., which I think is a hardship in the summertime.
Let me ask you.
Can-
I want to ask, is there the appetite to make this effective not in accordance with the Home Rule Charter, but instead within, say, 6 months? The only reason I say that is because with COVID-19 shutting down so much of construction for such a long time, a lot of people are trying to play catch-up, and restricting them by 2 additional hours per day seems like it could be a hardship to them. It also feels to me like there are people around them who may be trying to grit their teeth and white-knuckle their way through a construction project, and if we add on additional days to the end of the project because we're taking away hours, they may be unhappy. That's not a requirement for me, but I'm just interested in taking the temperature of the board.
So I'm sorry, I don't want to more.
So I guess to that point directly, the other hardship is that people are home more, they're working from home, their children are being schooled at home. The days where the construction was happening while you were out of the house is over, probably for a very long time. That being said, I'm not, does the 2 hours at night make that much of a difference? It would be something if you're living next to it. I just put that out there for consideration. And I forgot my other point, so you can go, Sean.
Thank you, Maura. Yeah, I guess we read each other's mind. Yeah, you're going to be home a lot more. You're going to hear it. The other issue, too, is if you have kids like me, then your kids are going to be subject to the noise. And then sleeping. I know that we had a big issue. The school board changed times because of, circadian rhythms and sleeping and moved the school buses and all that. And now you're saying, well, let's forget about all that. Let's let them do construction till 10. And, if it's inside and it's painting, that's fine. But, if they're using a buzz saw or a chop saw and you're hearing it, and again, I'll speak for the people in Garrett Hill, Conestoga Village, where our houses are very, very tight, and there's a lot of changing in growth and side projects. I think 9 o'clock is too late. I really think it's too late. So it is a hardship on the construction, or it's going to be a hardship on the parents with kids and that want to, have their kids go to school. And for me, not all construction, some construction is done while the people live in the house, but sometimes it's not. So I'm focusing on the people that live in Radnor and are sleeping there, and you're more likely to be a resident sleeping there than someone that's trying to flip it or do a reno where you may or may not be there. So
I'm just curious where people are finding contractors that work till 9 o'clock at night. Can you send them my way, please?
No,
I've never heard of a contractor that's working till 9 o'clock at night.
they don't. I also, I think that some of the issues that we're talking about are solved with subsection B, which does allow for, permits for emergency construction or repair, to show proof of necessity of such work. So that may not have to be an emergency, but if you can show, like perhaps the gentleman tonight is making a case that he has a special reason, it can be considered, and I appreciate that section. Well, you'll see that everything is a hardship and everything is an emergency. So well,
Well, we've had an ordinance that has existed for how long that has prevented people from doing construction on Sundays and holidays, and I'm going to say in my 3 years, this is the first time someone has come to us to ask for special permission to do that. Granted, we are in, as Commissioner Larkin said, strange times, and there's a lot of hardship when it comes to that, and maybe more people will come to us, but I don't think anyone else has come to us.
So, it has been done before. Toward the end of the CICD, Villanova was behind, and they reached out to the former manager to see if they could work on Sundays. And I was not happy to hear that when he said, go ahead and do it, and that's more of a board vote, more of an issue of having an ordinance and not following what that ordinance says. So, again, what is a hardship and what is an emergency, they're going to gray very easy depending on who's there, how big the project is, and maybe who your lawyer is.
I got to give you credit, Sean, for always working Villanova in some way.
Is there any additional commissioner comment? Is there any staff comment? Is there any public comment?
Can I just say, and Mr. Smith, please feel free to speak. I was just going to say, do we want to vote on this, and then can we deal with Mr. Smythe's request separately?
Well, I think he wants to comment on the ordinance itself. And
Okay,
then we
certainly.
can,
Yeah, but then we'll deal with your request, which would have been even before we.
So, a couple of things I would point out. First off, I would ask for people to consider that if you have a construction project in a commercial or a commercial district, that it should be viewed somewhat differently than the construction that has taken place much longer than 9 o'clock at night in my current neighborhood, a residential neighborhood, 7 days a week. So it is going to be very hard to, I think, police some of those, complaints within the township. So here I'm coming to you tonight, appealing to you based on a COVID-19. So I think it is a unique situation in which I'm coming to you kind of asking for an exception because the alternative is, I think, much worse than what I'm asking for, because it will have a negative impact on traffic. It will have a negative impact on certainly a lot of potential issues within the township. And I have a record within the township of being quite responsive to neighbors and the community and friendly within the township. So it is an exception to the rule, and I would ask that you would consider perhaps amending what you're looking to, based on perhaps COVID or based on a commercial versus a residential area as a special exception, may be something that should be considered. Because I think residential issues, I certainly hear what you're saying and support that and understand that, having lived through that.
I care about two things, really, noise and light. If you can do it without having noise going onto your property, I mean, if you're using an electric drill to drill a hole in here, that's fine, no one's going to say anything. But when you have chop saws and trucks beeping, that's something else. So I think it's, if you do it right, no one's probably gonna say anything. I'm not telling you to break an ordinance.
Yep.
I'm just telling you, common sense is gonna prevail. If you're doing it in the middle of a neighborhood and you got lights and concrete and you're dumping stuff and you know, you don't wanna cut something inside, so you're mitering outside, that's something else.
We're starting to get a little ways away from public comment.
Oh, sorry. But anyway, I mean, that's what I care about, noise, really, and light. And, you know, so I think if you can do it, go ahead and do it, but that's when the ordinance is gonna come into play, that you are breaking it. But if no one's gonna say anything, I don't know, if a tree falls in the wood, does it make a noise? It's kind of that analogy.
Well, I just
Well,
wanted
it's-
to, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, that's kind of built into the language of it, that it's the noise that emits beyond the premises. It's not what machine you're using, it's the effect it has beyond the premises you're working on, so.
I think the disruption of flow, noise is important, but when you disrupt potentially the flow of traffic and you add potentially to risk within the community, I think that's far greater risk if people are having difficulty pulling in or exiting. It's problematic, and that's why I'm coming for consideration, special consideration, where I think it's a much better plan to do it on a Sunday than doing it during the work week.
Can you just a little bit more detail on what your plan is and what I know where you are and I know.
It is landscaping, it is curb removal, it is saws would not be operating. There would be a dump truck that would be brought in, you know, larger trucks that would be much more difficult to manage through during the normal work schedule. So there are a number of, you know, it's really, I don't see noise being an issue. I don't see any problems with, you know, machinery or anything like that being anything disruptive within the community. So.
Yeah, if it's noise or light, I don't know, can you do something like this on a trial basis? Like, you know, kind of like, you know, if it's going well in 2 weeks. And I know that everything what you do this week is not going to be doing what you do next week. And I will say, from what I know, you've done a lot for the community. And obviously, if we can give something back to you for everything that you've done, I think you've leased a car, a canine car. Am I correct on that?
Well, all right.
We've done a number of things.
Okay,
Point-
so, yeah, so, I mean, we obviously want to work with you, we want to be business-friendly, but we also have to,
Point of order, I'm sorry. Sean, I think we're getting really far away from, and I understand, and we hear what you're saying, Mr. Smythe, and I think we need to let's deal with the ordinance we've got here, and
All right,
then
okay.
we can address, Mr. Smythe, your concern and what you need with regards to, you know, I don't even know, a waiver or permission, I'm not sure what it is, but, sorry, Sean, I don't mean to interrupt you, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
we're comfortably beyond 5 minutes for
Maybe a
public
little
comment
bit,
at this
but
point.
that's
So
okay.
I'm going to ask if there's anybody else who has public comment on specifically the issue of adopting this noise ordinance. Hearing none, I'm going to call the vote on the ordinance. All in favor, say aye. As amended, say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Motion passes 5-1 with Commissioner Abel not on the dais. Okay, next, Mr. Smythe, you have specifically asked for a waiver under the existing ordinance, because all we did just now was to introduce, we do not yet have a new ordinance.
No, we passed that. That
Oh,
was
we
just
passed
passed.
Okay, we just adopted that, never mind. It should be under our charter, I think. Okay, so we have a new ordinance. You're applying for a waiver. The waiver provision of the new ordinance is substantially the same as the waiver provision of the old ordinance, it looks like, again, on my quick review. They should go through the Community Development Department, but we got an email about that from Kevin. Kevin, are you looking for us to issue a consensus on this for you, or?
Commissioner, I don't believe that the current or the new adopted ordinance allows staff to make that determination. We've run into that previously. Obviously, if there's an emergency where, and I'll use this morning as an example, at 2:30, 3 o'clock, we had a mediation company coming out and putting up plywood and a tarp on a roof, and saws were used, but that was in an emergency. When something like this, it's going to be on a case-by-case basis. and we thought it better to come in front of this board to grant that, subject to the individual applicant's expression to this board as to the justification for the request.
Okay. I'm mindful of the fact that we're not the Community Development Department, which is supposed to be issuing the permits, and I frankly have some concerns about this board entertaining the applications because I have concerns that we're going to be inundated over time, but we haven't been previously, and it was the same provision that was in the old ordinance, so maybe that concern is misplaced. So I'm going to ask, do we have a consensus on the board that Mr. Smythe in particular should get a waiver? I will be the first person to say yes, I think so. Sounds like you're looking for 3 weekends?
That's correct.
Okay.
I asked for an extended period of time. I asked for that over an extended period of time, knowing contractors and knowing how things could be delayed, but it would be over 3 weekends.
Okay.
I would say that I would vote for this too, but this was not a waiver that was given notice to the public. And, you know, Land Rover, the main line is right next to those Pembroke condos. And I want to give them a chance if they want to chime in on this. So I would ask that it goes on the agenda so that we have notice. I'm ready to vote for it in light of the circumstances, but not without the folks in the condos.
I would just ask everyone to consider that through all of the approvals that we received in our construction project, there was not one voice that came up and spoke as an objection, because we had addressed those objections with the members of the condos and or the units behind us. So a lot of the issues that were raised, I think we addressed, and we would certainly plan on identifying what is going on and making certain we manage through that.
Well, and I understand that, but again, it was, we were just had on there to allow it on Sunday anyway, so you could, but that never made it. So I think that if you get this, it's gonna be a surprise to some people in the condo. They won't have opportunity. That's all I'm saying. I think that they should have that. Because everything you reviewed with them, you didn't say you were gonna work on Sunday, because that's never been a provision.
Can I jump in? Because I think I have a fair compromise here. So how long is, the project is 3 weeks. So you'd be working what, like, is it like a 24-hour deal, like at 9 p.m.?
No.
You're going in there and like they're working until 7 a.m. until?
We would be willing to restrict the parameters to a reasonable start time in the morning and a reasonable.
What's reasonable?
I would say between 10 and 5.
10 and 5?
Yep.
So it'd be
No
just during.
start before 10 until 5
Okay.
p.m.
So this is my, hopefully I would think that this is a reasonable compromise. I would actually vote, and I understand, Rich, what you're saying, that the neighbors should have, they should have notice. And part of me agrees with that. The other thing that we could entertain is that we just waive it for the first week. So you can do it for Saturday or Sunday, and then if we don't hear any complaints, and if you want to come back, then we can, give you the other 2 weeks. I don't want to hold you up, but what Commissioner Booker's saying is the neighbors do need notice. I do think that's fair, and that really is a requirement when it comes to waivers or when it comes to zoning, that they know what's going on. So if that's something the board would want to entertain, where we do allow it at least over, the next weekend, and then you would, no problems, hey, let the neighbors know. We can come back and do that. I don't know if it's bad precedent to allow it. It may be, but I do get it. You're a business and things are time sensitive. And like I said, you've done a lot for the community. I know you share a driveway with the American Legion post. So you help out in the community. So wanting to work with you. It's important.
I have maybe another suggestion. I appreciate trying to come to a compromise, Sean. We're worried about giving notice to the community. Can we do it conditionally, that we give you the opportunity to say don't start for 2 weeks, and you have to notify the residents that it is coming, I mean, notice is just a heads up. It's not permission. It's just let them know it's happening because we've approved it, and then restrict it to the 3 Sundays of whenever you can get your contractor. But, 3 consecutive Sundays, and then that's it. I don't know, suggestion.
Mr. President, if I could chime in just real quickly. It sounds like, from the commissioner's standpoint, that there's not heavy objection against it. So if you don't mind, what we can do administratively is work out these details, the 10 to 5 p.m., which Sundays, the notification. We can work with you on that to make sure that the residents are notified, and that the parameters are met. I think we've gotten what we need from the board tonight, and that there's no serious objection to it. We'll work on the details going forward.
Thank you so much.
Beautiful. Thank you, Mr. Smythe. Thank you for coming in. Moving to reports of the standing committees of the boards. Do we have any board reports?
No report.
Hearing none, I'm going to move to new business. So we had planned to have on the agenda today, and I just didn't catch it when it didn't make it on. We had planned to have a discussion of the reassessment for the township and options the township has moving forward with respect to either challenging aspects of the reassessment or not, discussing them with county council, discussing them in court, that kind of thing. We can have that discussion today at 10:03 p.m., or we can push that on to the next meeting. What's the pleasure of the board?
Make a motion and pass it, move it on to the next meeting.
Just a quick question, is it time sensitive that we would have to?
So obviously, it's time sensitive in the sense that we will be setting our budget, and our budget is going to be restricted based on whether or not there will or will not be a reassessment that goes into effect in 2021. That being said, we have the leeway to change our budget by as much as 10% based on the budget numbers. I can't speak for anybody else, since tomorrow is the day that we will know what our budget numbers looks like. So I can't promise that we won't, but I would find it extraordinarily strange if we intended to move our budget by more than 10%, which means that we're basically in the same position this year that we are every year.
Jack, can I make a suggestion that we see what those numbers are, and then maybe that we have a meeting in between, basically a budget meeting, just for that, a special meeting.
Just to deal with the reassessment?
Just to deal with the reassessment and the budget. And I don't want extra meetings, but then we can focus on that. I know a lot of residents have a lot of concerns with the reassessment and the numbers, and we can go through it. And I am comfortable with that, doing that. And then it's not done at 10 o'clock at night. It's not, one of 10 items on an agenda. But our budget and our taxes, that's the, that's the main thing that a lot of the residents care about.
Is there a concern that this is not going to be generally revenue neutral or approximately revenue neutral?
No, there are two different concerns. By definition, it has to be revenue neutral because we just amend our tax rate. The concern that has been advanced by some people is that the assessment was essentially done incorrectly in such a way that it favors commercial properties, which have gone up in value far less than their residential counterparts. I frankly think that concern may be a little bit overblown, just because commercial establishments are reassessed far more frequently than residential establishments, just because they change their purpose so often, whereas a residence is, generally speaking, only reassessed potentially once every 20 years when we have the reassessment. There's another concern that the market conditions have changed so dramatically since the reassessment took place because of COVID-19 that the numbers that are in place are just totally unreliable across the board. While that may be the case, frankly, my experience has been that the residential market has heated up while the commercial market has slowed down, which would again be consistent with the spread that we already have, but nevertheless, it's worth talking about. And then finally, there's a generalized concern. We're going to, as residential property owners, end up paying far more under the assessment in almost every case, which means that because we're looking at a lot of layoffs, people are taking cuts at work, do we want to just petition, please, could we have an additional year to the court, or try and get the county council to do that on our behalf in order to get some equitable relief under those circumstances? I'm sure that there are other concerns that are out there, but those are the three that I've generally heard.
Well, I think it's interesting to note that the city of Philadelphia has pushed off their reassessment, implementing their new numbers until 2023. And then, most recently, the school district, the Radnor Township School District, so they are in the process of determining which assessments, and I'm going to read from their website, just so I'm correct. They're determining which assessments to appeal based on consideration of the property type. And they're also reviewing the analysis because they do feel that there's been an unfair and inequitable, and I'm quoting, unfair and inequitable shift of the total real estate tax burden to our district's residential property owners. So, the school district is exploring that. I think that, certainly a lot of times, or most times, we do allow the school district to take a lead when it comes to the assessments. And, challenging those. So, they are doing some of that work. Do we want to support that? I agree. Do we want to try to reach out to the county and see if pushing this off is something that they can consider? I know this is a court-ordered situation, but, I think we need to look at this and see there are some people that are going to be significantly impacted by this, and it may be some people that, are not in a position to be impacted that way at this time.
Well, it never hurts to ask for a delay, but I would be interested in finding out what the school district is basing that. If they say residential are going to be paying more, I haven't seen anything, so maybe Bill or Bob, you have something that they're looking at, and if you could provide that.
Are we going to be?
Yeah, no, just real quickly, we've seen what I'll call pretty close to final numbers. Obviously, they're still moving based on appeals and challenges, but we do have a database of what those numbers are, so we can provide that.
We have the numbers, but we're going to adjust the millage. So, in other words, I want to understand how they came to the shift. They're saying that there's a shift. So where's that data?
We, upon hearing the concerns from the school district, we did a quick and dirty, to be perfectly honest. It wasn't overly scientific look at it. And it does appear that there is a significant shift from commercial to residential. And that's all things being equal. That doesn't take into consideration any adjustments in millage. It's looking at revenue neutral and what the impact would be to individual residential payers versus commercial.
So somebody's taken the total amount of commercial properties, assessed value before, assessed value now, and the total amount of residential assessed value previously and now, and they say the proportion has changed.
Yeah, but I don't want to, I think what Commissioner Larkin said earlier is accurate in that the commercial reassessments or assessment updates are more frequent than residential. So that, what happened at the reassessment may turn out to be accurate. It just feels like it's not because it's been such a long time since the residential part of it's been looked at.
And that certainly may be the case, and it may prove to be unfounded or, that's just the way it is. But, the school district, what they put out is they're saying that currently residential property owners shoulder 79.8% of the total real estate tax burden, and now the new assessment has residential going up to 84.3%, so that's a 5.6% increase.
In the total, yeah.
Mhm.
All right, so again, somebody, that's what I'm saying. Somebody took those proportions. So could we see that? And then I'd like to talk about it and decide. I guess if you want to, my view was go ahead and ask for a delay, sure. Let's wait till 2023 before implementing it. Why not? But, other than that, I'd like to see that, but to have a more informed discussion.
That's my question. Yeah, well, so
Sounds like we're going to discuss this at the next meeting, and maybe we can include some of those numbers in at least the rough form, because if we include the entire spreadsheet in the packet, it's going to be 10,000 pages, but maybe we include some of those numbers in the next packet.
Jack, I just have a quick follow-up. If we do wait, are we going to be in a long line of every other township in the county that's trying to do this, that's trying to get some kind of favor with the county or not?
So this is a court-ordered reassessment. It's my understanding, which is, of course, limited by the fact that I have not done research on this, but it's my understanding that we would have to, in some way, try to intervene in the existing case in which the court had ordered the reassessment and ask the court for a stay of the reassessment. If we did that, we would not be getting in line in the sense that, if I'm correct, and if we did that, we would not be getting in line in the sense that we would be waiting for the other townships. If other townships did the same thing, then we would, if the court ruled on them favorably, then he would never even have to get 2 hours. We would just delay everything for everybody.
That's almost like a class action versus done individually, so to speak. Lack of a better term, I'll use your.
Yeah, I mean, there would just be a volume of townships who are doing this. I haven't heard of any other township who has filed such a petition and motion yet, though. Okay, we'll put that on the next agenda. Is there any old business? Hearing none, public participation. That was the new business. You have more new business? Go nuts.
This morning at a little after midnight, in the unit block of St. David's Road, out by the Willows, the intersection of Church Road and Darby Paoli, Radnor, volunteer, career, firefighters, EMS, and Radnor police were called to a significant house fire. A lot of fire and smoke showing, and a lot of mutual aid from about 8 companies around. Residents were displaced. Firefighters rescued 2 cats and battled the blaze for about an hour and a half before it was under control, and worked together, as I said, with about 8 mutual aid companies from throughout the area. Berwyn, Bryn Mawr Fire Company, Newtown Square Fire Company, Gladwin Fire Company, Broomall Fire Company, Paoli Fire Company, Marple EMS, Riddle EMS. As I said, Radnor Township Police were on scene controlling it. Pico Gas was there, and the state of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania State Police Fire Commissioner. So I just want to take an opportunity to recognize our volunteer firefighters, our paid career firefighters, our EMS, and certainly our Radnor Police for a job well done. Crews did not get out of there until well after 3 in the morning, and most folks didn't get to bed until 4 a.m. So I just want to take this opportunity to recognize all of those folks. Chief McGuire was back on scene with investigators today, and the residents were literally in tears at the commitment and the dedication of everyone on scene, and what everybody did to prevent total destruction of their home. Thank you.
Thank you. Public comment. Hearing none, I will move to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. We are adjourned.